Everyone, I'm Margaret Smith. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. And the Town of Los Gatos Special Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, I have March 21st, but I know it's May 21st, is now called to order. Mr. Paulson, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Erickson?
Here.
Commissioner Sayoc?
Here.
Commissioner Badami?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Talasfor?
Here.
Vice Chair Birch?
Here.
Chair Smith.
Here. And could you please join Commissioner Erickson in the Pledge of Allegiance? As many of you know, the Town of Los Gatos strongly encourages public participation at our hearings. You can do public participation in several different ways. If you have a comment that you would like to make about something about an item that interests you but is not on the agenda, you fill out a speaker card, and you can come up during our verbal communication period and talk with us for 3 minutes. There are two other ways this evening that you can also make comments. One is if you're an applicant, you will come up and present your information on the agenda item. And if you are here to speak on an agenda item, again, everyone who approaches the podium to speak has to fill out a speaker card. And then after the applicant makes his presentation, we will take public comments as well. There are no minutes, am I correct, Mr. Paulson? There are no minutes this evening?
That's correct.
And are there any written communications?
There are not.
Any continuances?
No.
All right. The commissioners also participate in subcommittees, and oftentimes these meetings take place between our meetings of the commission. Are there any commissioners that wish to report on any subcommittee hearings? Seeing none, we will move on. Now we have what we call the verbal participation. I don't see any cards here, but if there's anyone in the audience, one is coming forward. If you could step to the podium, you can give us your card at the very end. Come to the podium. And when you address us, please state your name. Oh, is it on an agenda item or no? You have to wait till I call the agenda item. All right. Seeing no one in the audience that wants to speak during verbal communications, we will now move on to the consent calendar. There are no items on the consent calendar, Mr. Paulson.
There are not.
All right. So we have a continued public hearing this evening, agenda item 1, which is a request to approve a conditional use permit to operate a quality restaurant with separate bar and full alcohol service at 55 Los Gatos Saratoga Road, conditional use permit application U13018. Are there any disclosures from any commissioners on this matter? Commissioner Badami.
I'll be recusing myself as my residence is within 500 feet of the item.
All
Number
right.
1.
So you will step to another room, and as soon as we conclude this item, we will come and bring you back. Ms. Avila, I understand that you'll be giving us the report this evening.
Good evening. The Planning Commission considered the conditional use permit application for a quality restaurant with full alcohol service at the April 23rd meeting. The Commission continued the matter to this agenda, directing the applicant to provide clearer plans, additional operational details, and some traffic information for the proposed to-go window. The applicant provided a revised site plan with a smaller bar, and that also clarifies the location of the proposed 82 seats. Additional information on the to-go window, and clarified that the private dining room will also will serve as a dual purpose. It will be used in the morning as a breakfast room for motel guests, and then as a private dining room when the restaurant is open for business. The town traffic engineer advised that the to-go window is considered an ancillary use to the proposed quality restaurant. Trip generation rates would not change with inclusion of this window. We received 2 additional pieces of correspondence regarding this application, and they're both attached to the staff report. One is a letter from the Las Casitas Homeowners Association supporting the proposed restaurant. The other is a letter from the owner of the commercial property that's directly across the street on Alberta Way that cites some concerns and also includes some recommendations on the requested use permit. The Commission's options this evening are to forward a recommendation to the Town Council for either approval or denial, or you could forward a recommendation with revised conditions of approval, or you could continue the applications, providing direction to staff and the applicant for desired plan changes or provision of additional analysis or information. That concludes staff's report, and we are available if you have any questions.
Are there any questions? Ms. Avila, I do have a question of you. I just want to be certain, as I read your report, in the patio seating, they have shown the tree planters, and your comments in the report are that a wall or a fence will be required. But when I look at the drawing, I'm not sure. I see green foliage. Is the red line around it the fence, or is it?
That is just a raised planter, and so that would includes, the planter provides a semi-enclosure, but the patio seating is still out there in the open within that area, and it would need to have some sort of enclosure around it if alcohol is going to be served out there.
So as a condition of approval, we need to see that fence, and there's height requirements as well?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Birch.
To follow up on that, just so I have the knowledge, it doesn't have to be a solid structure. It could just be a regular fence,
It
right?
could be a wrought iron fence. I believe it needs to be 3 or 4 feet high. There's a height requirement, and it is set by the ABC. And you've seen them at a number of other
Yeah.
outdoor seating areas. They're 3 or 4 feet high typically.
Okay.
And yeah, absolutely, it could be some kind of open thing. It's just a barrier to prevent people from going in and out when they have alcoholic beverages.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'd like you to tell us again, you said because it's an ancillary use, what was the conclusion?
The traffic generation would be the same. Having a to-go window doesn't, it doesn't affect the traffic generation. So we use ITE standards, which are standardized trip generation rates for various uses. And the traffic engineer said that because that's just an ancillary use, it doesn't theoretically generate any additional traffic. The generation rates would be for a quality restaurant, and if that window's there or it's not there, the rates would be the same for how we would calculate it and figure out the number of trips that are associated with the use.
And we don't have anybody here tonight that's familiar with the regulations or the international code. What I'm asking is, it doesn't seem apparent to me that if you don't have that window, or you do have that window, it won't make any difference to traffic. Because if that were the case, why would anybody bother to put the window in? The window is to serve food, and I guess they hope somebody comes and gets food. If so, there's a likelihood they're going to drive.
Well, I believe the applicant's doing it as a convenience to the motel guests, and yeah, potentially someone could come from off-site, order food, and take it away, and that would obviously generate a trip.
Yeah, and the town's traffic engineer isn't here to get to your first point. And whether there's a to-go window or not a to-go window, they still can offer to-go food. So whether someone can get their food from this window or whether they have to walk into the restaurant and get to-go food, that is still an option.
That's true. However, the inducement of walking up to a window may be such that it would impact traffic as opposed to parking and walking around and going into the restaurant and taking it out again. So I just wanted to know to what extent we can consider that. And thank you.
Commissioner Talisfor.
Follow-up question to the low wall separation wall. Can you refresh my memory? You just said that, well, let me ask you this. Was I to understand that the separation wall is something that's dictated by the alcohol?
The ABC, the Alcoholic Beverage Control,
So does the
it
town
requires
adhere-
that when they're going to serve alcoholic beverages in a seating area, and it's to separate it from the public.
Right, I understand that. So my follow-up question to that is, does the town not have their own policy or code as far as these barriers are concerned?
There's some general information in the the commercial design guidelines for outdoor seating areas, but we don't have a specific requirement for the barrier. They vary. They're typically wrought iron fences, but yet California Cafe, for example, has planters that does theirs. So it needs to be a certain height. It needs to be something that encloses the area so that it's not accessible from someone that's outside of it.
Okay. So that's about as defined as it is, as I remember.
And it's certainly
right?
appropriate to ask to see the details of that.
Yeah,
If
okay.
the commission would like to see those details.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Avila, if I could just have a follow-up about the traffic count, but actually the parking. And one of the issues raised in a letter was the dialysis center, the number of employees, and the delivery trucks in and out. And I'm just wondering if you have some general information you can share with us in terms of that. I see the design of the parking lot, and it looks like there's only, up front, close, there's only like 5 or 6 parking stalls. And then across the way, of course, is the dialysis center, which has some parking as well. So when we consider parking, we're looking at the entire area, right?
Correct. There's 70-plus parking spaces in this parking lot, and they're all to support all of the uses on the property, and they're not designated specifically for one use.
So this is what I was asking. So when we see parking spaces, it's almost irrelevant on this design, correct? I mean, we shouldn't be swayed one way or the other. That's what I'm trying to
A
ask.
restaurant patron could park anywhere within the parking lot, as could someone that's going to the dialysis center or to the motel.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
When we initially considered this building, in light of the fact that there was an existing motel there, one of the things we were told by the applicant was the uses should work in conjunction, because one was going to be an office building that worked in the daytime, and therefore it would free up parking at night. Now, as I understand it, you're going to have lunch being served, and in other words, this will be a dual use on a parking lot, which was a real concern of the Planning Commission when this first came up. I don't see any provision for that. How has our analysis been? You'll recall that when we discussed this initially,
Yes.
we were all concerned about that, and we were told that, well, there won't be an overlap. But now, as I understand it, there will be an overlap.
There is an overlap, but that's why we had the parking study redone, and that was taken into consideration. The traffic consultant looked at they looked at the dialysis centers at a couple of other locations, because this one wasn't open yet. They looked at similar types of restaurants and small motels to come up with the numbers that they did, and according to their analysis, this can work. The applicant has done extended traffic counts over about a 5-year period to show the number of vehicles that are in the parking lot, and they are confident that this will work. But it is all a numbers game, and
Well, the studies would have been when there was merely a motel use, and as I understand it, the vacancy factor in that motel was substantial. That's what they told us when they said they needed this.
it was very low when the plan development was originally approved. That is correct.
And the letter we received tonight from the neighbor across the street tells us that their parking lot is being used to facilitate this property across the street. So I'm confused by that in light of our engineering study.
Well, the number of rooms has gone down as well. They're going to ultimately have 48 rooms, and it was a little bit higher when the PD was approved.
Well, the vacancy factor was so high that they'd have to go down, way down, to make any difference. So yes, there is I recall there is a reduction. But anyway, I've asked you enough questions. Thank you.
I would just add that the parking study that was done, the hotel that was used for those counts was at 90% occupancy at the time. So just for information.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're now going to open the public portion of the continued public hearing, and we will give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission. If I could also make a remark, since we've had a couple of phones ringing, the commissioners themselves always have to have our phones totally shut off, but if we could, at least in the audience, have them put on silent, that would go a long way to lessen our interruptions this evening. Mr. Shank, I believe that you are going to be representing the applicant, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and then if I could also state, I think there was one other person who had a card. If you wanted to bring it forward and give it to a staff member, then we can put it up here as well. Thank you, Mr. Schenk. You're going to have 5 minutes. When you get down to the last 30 seconds, the light's going to turn yellow. And please pull the microphone up so that we can hear you. Thank you.
And our tenant is here as well, so I'm planning to yield some time to him as well.
Hold on, because your mic doesn't seem to be on.
Hello? Hello? I'll talk louder.
Okay, there we go.
John Shank, 14573 Big Basin Way, Saratoga, California, 95070. To jump right into it, as we did last time, staff has recommended denial based on that it violates the alcohol policy. We understand that one of the conditions that you may have to put on us is to comply with the alcohol policy. We understand that. So same answer as last time there. Want to hit quickly the letter that we furnished for you. Since the April 23rd Planning Commission meeting, we have secured a tenant for the proposed restaurant who is here tonight. This is the same tenant that I referenced during that April 23rd meeting. We've been speaking to this gentleman for a long time. We've known him for a long time. This isn't a new relationship, but we saw how important it seemed to be to the Planning Commission for us to have that tenant secured, and that's why he's come forward now. He has approximately 30 years of experience in the restaurant industry and is currently a distinguished local restaurateur. You might recognize him. His input has influenced our response in the letter that you've seen, as well as the drawings that you've received. So I want to hit a few items that you made comments on last time, just briefly. One of them was that the alcohol service area was too dominant. Hopefully you've seen in the drawings that we've tried to address that. Secondly, it was unclear if the private dining room and the breakfast room are the same room. They are the same room, and we're hoping our drawings are clear in general, because it did seem you didn't think some of the drawings were clear, so hopefully they are more clear to you now. Thirdly, and this has come up, it sounds like, in the discussion period, you're unsure if the parking is going to work with the to-go window. You know, there are the parking studies, and hopefully those stand on their own merit, but if you see it as a condition, which is to remove the to-go window, we understand that, and that would be acceptable to us. Fourthly, it was the applicant will need to conform to Section 2.8 of the alcohol policy. We understand that. And then if I could also say, we know that a lot of items came up after the public portion was done last time, and we're here and have our tenant here to happily answer any questions. So hopefully any questions that you have come up during the public period, so we're able to address them. And with that, I'd like to introduce Andrew Welch.
Hello, everyone.
Mr. Welch, just state your name and address for the record, and then just know that you will also be filling out a card before you
I
leave
did
this
fill out a
evening.
card.
Oh, you did? Okay, so you're up here. Okay,
All
thank you.
legit. Andrew Welch, 20602 Marion Road in Saratoga. Soon after I get married this Saturday, to be on Shannon Road. A little of my background. About 18 years ago, I was here representing Eastfield Ming Kwong and the Village House. The ladies there, we ended up getting this conditional use permit, which is now where Manresa is. We sold that to Manresa, which turned out to be a win-win for everyone based on structural issues that the charity Eastfield Ming Kwong did not want to deal with at that time. I had an opportunity to take over a restaurant called The Basin, which I did 15 years ago. When I took it over, it was a sports bar serving Jägermeister and Cuervo Gold shots and God knows what else. And I quickly became unpopular with the patrons there as I changed it to what it is now. It is considered a go-to business location. The clientele is very high-end. My menu is such that it is not cheap, but it works to be open for families as well as business. We have a lot of integrity in what we do. Everything is green in the restaurant. We have 0 reports of any incidences with the ABC in the past 15 years of me operating. 0 sheriff reports. We do not stay open to the 2 a.m. hour. We usually close our doors around 10:30, 11, even though we can stay open until then. It's not what I want to do. I'm 47 years old and I am an owner-operator. I'm on the floor, and it'd be kind of nice to be close and back and supporting these gentlemen, because They're exceptional, and it's been 15 years in that location. And I want to build something from the ground up that really works with the excellence of food that we do, the business people we bring in. We have a great, now a business motel, and it's just a combination of a class operation that I want to be a part of.
All right. Mr. Welch, you've completed your comments, and your time is up. So I am going to open the floor to some questions of both of you, all right? Commissioner Erickson.
So, pardon me. Thank you for the work that you've done since the last Planning Commission meeting. It seemed that you addressed some issues. So I have two questions for you, if that's okay, Madam Chair. So if I look at the drawings which were provided, am I to interpret correctly that the stairway which leads to the second floor of the motel is immediately outside of the sliding doors for the restaurant?
It's not immediately outside, it comes down.
Well, with the entrance to the stairway.
The entrance to the stairway, there's a wall right there, and then there are sliding doors.
Well, I'm talking about the location of the stairway. I'm not so worried about the sliding doors. Let me tell you the reason for my question. I wanted to be sure I was interpreting it correctly, because those stairs don't exist at this moment because of the construction, and there's what I assume to be a set of temporary stairs which comes down in the middle of what would otherwise be the ADA parking spot. Okay. So am I
That's
understanding
exactly right. Those are temporary
correctly?
stairs,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So then my concern, the reason for asking that question, is there will be circulation, it seems to me, through the patio area that you've designated for the restaurant, from the parking area, from the street, wherever people enter there, through the middle of the patio area, up to those stairs, through the middle of the dining area. Is that correct?
It's been busy times for us, and that's why I think you had such a loose rendition the first time. They don't know all of my desires. My desire for that particular space is to have everyone enter through the main entrance. I, as an operator, do not want anyone coming through the patio area. I want them to enter through the main restaurant. I would like to see a gate in place that seals off that, but is ADA accessible with a push bar, and if need be, a button on the outside. But we certainly want people flowing through the restaurant, so we don't have people coming that way through the patio and interrupting people.
Okay, I'm not talking about the people who are going to the restaurant. I'm talking about the people who are going to the second floor of the motel. It seems like to me there's no way for you to prevent them from using that stairway to come down from their motel room and go through the patio. There's no place else for them to go. And if they choose to go up to their hotel room, the reason I'm asking the question is because it seems like to me it is totally impractical for you to be able to meet the ABC or the town's requirements to cordon off that patio area to serve alcoholic beverages there. So I don't understand how you're going to be able to do that, given that you've got to allow people to come down that stairway to exit from the second floor and to enter that way.
So the reality of the situation is that a lot of people are going to enter through the main lobby, and especially for the second floor folks, we have an elevator in the lobby, and we spend a lot of time and effort trying to get that. So it sounds to me like you're referencing ABC requirements, things that will relate to the alcohol permit submittal with the ABC. Am I understanding that right? So they may not allow that based on this configuration, or is this a town requirement you're talking about?
Well, I don't want to speak for the ABC, but the town has a requirement that in the alcohol beverage policy that an area, an outdoor seating area, needs to be cordoned off so that the general public can't pass into that area. So I'm trying to understand how you could accomplish that when you've got resident people staying in a second floor hotel that have to be able to exit that way. So so I'd be open to you or the architect helping me understand how that's possible.
I think, as Andrew said, one of the ways would be with gates and such that would be ADA approved, I assume. It would be done with construction methodologies to prevent access based on the condition that it sounds like you'd put onto us.
Okay, that's fine. That's the first question. Okay, my second question is, there are very specific findings that we would need to make in order to make a positive recommendation for late hour alcohol beverage service, and that ultimately the town council will have to in order to approve the CUP. If the deciding body can't make those findings, and therefore alcoholic beverage service was limited to 10 o'clock, to closing at 10 o'clock, would you alter the hours of operation of the restaurant?
Finances are always a reality. I know that right now I have a restaurant that is I have a restaurant that's finances are always a reality. I have a restaurant that is very successful and my margins are only 5%. It's scary to say to me that someone could come in at 9:30 for a reservation on a business dinner, on a date, and for me to say to them, I'm now taking away your glass of champagne or your bottle of wine that you're sharing responsibly at 10 o'clock. I would like to see that, hey, we don't take any reservations after 10 o'clock. No one else can come inside the door by 10 o'clock. We're not going to continue to serve ridiculously, but if they've already ordered their beverage by 10 o'clock, I'd like them to be able to enjoy it.
Madam Chair, is it okay if I ask my question again because he didn't answer my question?
Okay, Commissioner Erickson?
So the question that I ask, if the deciding body can't make the findings that allows alcoholic beverage service after 10 p.m., just assume that for the moment. I'm not saying that they will or they won't. If they can't make the findings that allows alcoholic beverage service after 10, would you change the operating hours of the restaurant?
I want to be very clear in answering this. Are you saying that I cannot take a drink order at 9:59? And if so, I wouldn't have to change the hours because we already do want to close the doors at 10 p.m. No one else would be walking in the restaurant at that point. I want them to be able to sit down and be able to get a glass of wine, however. We obviously have to pay our bills, but I am not the operator that's going to stay open and keep those doors open and people flowing in till 11:30. I want to go home, and it's a nice restaurant.
That's a sufficient answer for me.
Commissioner O'Donnell, and then Commissioner Birch.
Andrew, I didn't recognize you at first. I saw you, I remember when you were very young and you were working here in town. So I've seen you for many years. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you.
Is this restaurant, in what respect is this restaurant going to be similar, design-wise, to the restaurant you now operate in Saratoga?
Design-wise, it's going to be very different, not integrity-wise, not food-wise. We use all truly sustainable fish. We compost everything. We use green chemicals. But it's an opportunity for me to take the talents of food that we have and design the restaurant from the get-go the way we want it to be. The pizza / area that we didn't have a lot of input in the first place, I need to have that in play behind that bar area because it's service that I want to be able to give. I have refrigeration, I have plates, I have glassware that needs to be polished. I have prep that's all going to be going on behind there. It's a big job to service the hotel and regular patrons out of this small of a footprint. And some of these things look big, but it's really a small place that we're working with.
So how much input have you had in this drawing that we have?
The second one that you
Yes.
have today, we were able to sit down together and start the process of getting us where we want to be.
Okay, the reason I asked that question is it sounds like you're not there yet. From what some of your answers are that you wouldn't do it that way.
The footprint is extremely close. Obviously, with any project, you're going to have ADA issues, you're going to have compliance issues, you're going to have bathroom issues that might need to be changed. But the general layout is very close, and I feel good about being able to give great service with that and take care of the patrons and the hotel.
So the 24-foot long bar, that's satisfactory to you?
That's plenty for me, yes.
Okay. And on Commissioner Erickson's point, I guess what I'm trying to think of now is if we were to approve this evening, we have certain conditions that are coming up. And one of the conditions that Commissioner Erickson was raising is to free up that stairwell so that it doesn't walk down into or walk up from the enclosed area for the bar. So if we were to impose a condition saying you're going to deal with that and to the satisfaction of, let us say, staff, you'd be agreeable to that.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I've already heard that if we said, if we were not satisfied with the walk-up window, you could live without it.
I really want it gone anyway.
Okay,
So-
so do I. All right, thank you very much.
Commissioner Birch.
Do you have this drawing in front of you?
I do.
Okay, good. Because one of the things that struck me was when you made a comment about a couple things here that also makes me feel like you didn't have probably enough input in this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to hit some pretty specific points that I think is going to help us all quite a bit.
All right.
Okay, specifically, let's talk about the stairs. Does that stairwell need to be there?
That stairwell, you're off to the right section.
Yeah.
Never even paid attention to it. I understand now it's coming from the second story. My only thought on it off the cuff is, and please stop me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to represent the gentleman who actually rebuilt this building, is there are other entrances and other exits that could be used, and perhaps that could be closed off as an emergency exit only.
So then I would ask you, because really, to make this meet the code requirements, this is going to be very difficult, and it's going to eat into your patio. You're probably going to have to get rid of those sliding doors to make the gate, because there has to be access at the foot of the stairs. Could it move?
I don't know.
Let me comment on this. This is a fire exit. I mean, these were, the current stair is interior to the building, and it's being pulled out to make way for this private dining hotel breakfast room. And it's being altered so that it would have access exiting for fire exit from those rooms. So that stair is absolutely needed. And we've gone through the exterior renovation, the DRC process, in order to get this type of thing approved. So this is a permitted item that we want to enact, and it sounds like there's the alcohol service issue related to this. And it seems to me, if I'm not, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that the alcohol piece is the tail wagging the dog in here, right? Which is understandable. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. But this stair is needed for a fire exit, yes, because we have guest rooms up there, it's absolutely needed.
Well, okay, that's understandable. I guess that I'm wondering, as you're going to go back and hopefully refine these drawings, that perhaps you could look even at shifting them to the right a couple feet to allow the clearance, or change them. Because I have a hunch what I'm saying is going to become a conversation between the two of you. Because what's going to happen is you're going to lose sliding doors and you're going to lose part of your patio with this. So I'm not going to beat the horse or anything here, but I think that needs to be a discussion, because I think it's going to be a problem down the road. The second question I had was, you made a comment that you don't want people going through the patio to get into the restaurant, that you want them going through the main entry first.
I do, because I want them to be greeted properly. I want to be able to check their reservation in. I want them to flow to their right place, whether they have guests already waiting, whether it's a private business group. I don't want there to be interruption if there's something going on the patio. We want to control where people go and the type of people that are coming in, so I don't want people just showing up. I don't see us having issues with patrons, but I still like to control the flow.
Sure, I completely agree. I'm just curious how you're going to do that without changing the layout of the entry. Because where the main entry is, there's the only two ways to get to it are walking straight through your patio. So are you going to reconfigure that somehow?
My understanding is that path coming into the patio is going to be made clear, and we're going to have some separation so people are flowing in there through that main dining room.
Oh, okay.
They're not, or main entrance, I should say. They're not going to be able to flow past that walk point. I'm not going to have tables on that walk point.
Oh,
There'll
okay.
be some form of separation there.
So the line that goes from the ADA walkway to the entry, the straight line, you're going to have some type of barrier between that pathway and where the tables are to provide separation.
It should be there because it has to be clear, especially with
Right.
ADA requirements.
Okay, good, thank you. two more questions related. Is that okay? So as far as the internal layout, because you said you did have some input, as far as, let's look at like the kitchen area and the chef table and things, do you see any changes happening in that area? Or is this,
At this point, there might be movement of items because we have not laid out our actual kitchen sizes, what size is the grill that we can use, what sort of spacing do we need, walking space. I really like a comfortable space. I don't like cluttering. I don't like creating employee stress. Right now, it looks good. That kitchen in the back is going to be, in my mind right now, a lot of prep and receiving, whereas a lot of the main cooking is going to be along the 24-foot area.
okay, that was my next question. Because back behind the 24-foot area, I see you've got the grill in the hood and the counters. Okay, so you're actually going to be, that'll be where you'll be cooking.
Yeah, I want people to see food. I want them to enjoy it. That's really what it's about. But I need the support of this kitchen area in the back. I bring everything in whole. My fish come in whole. Nothing's pre-portioned.
Okay.
You know, it's a real prep-oriented restaurant.
Okay. And one last thing is, on the bar there, it does say plus or minus 24 feet. Are you comfortable with a cap at 24 feet? Because that certainly, plus or minus, gives you a couple foot wiggle room, and I think there's a point where we're going to encroach on the
believe based
conversation
on-
we had last time.
Excuse my interruption. I believe based on my measurements and what I have currently that I'm operating with, that I should be comfortable with that 24 feet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Sayak?
Thank you. Quick question. This is more for Mr. Shankick because it's more operations. You had mentioned that you understand that there's certain conditions that we may be imposing based on the alcohol discussion, and you said the same answers as last time. In your 5 minutes, could you just elaborate what were your answers last time?
Oh, let's see. Let me go back to my notes from the intro here, because I want to make sure. So I think, so you're talking about, did it have to do with the to-go window?
No. You opened up saying that based on the discussion, there were certain conditions we
Yes.
may be imposing and that your responses would be the same as last time.
The staff denial regarding.
Right.
I was acknowledging the fact that staff had denied this based on the fact that it violated the alcohol, the town's alcoholic beverage policy. And I think last time I made a comment that said, we understand that you might make us comply with the town's alcoholic beverage policy, and I understand that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the next question I had for you was, you have a copy of our staff report, correct?
I'm sure I do.
And one of the letters, it's Exhibit 13, that came forward were some concerns from the commercial property across from Alberta Way.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to look at those questions and recommendations, and could you just go through them with us? They're primarily parking and enforcement, but I think it would be helpful to hear from you how you plan to address a lot of these.
I have looked through it, and in fact, I've spent time, and the folks are here, the property manager and owner
Okay.
from that building, and we have sat down and met, and I certainly would never want to try to put words in their mouth, so I don't want to represent to you how they feel.
Okay.
But I view this letter as we want to be good neighbors with people, and we all know that we have certain rights as property owners. So after going through this letter with them, I think you see their recommendation. We go through it point by point if you want, but I think in summary, that one of the big issues certainly is safety and closing hour and related to alcohol service and things like that. And so I'm hopeful that in hearing from our tenant, who's run such a class facility for so long, and is not desiring to create havoc in the way, this is, as we've mentioned before, this isn't meant to be a bar that's for ruckus behavior. This is meant to be a fine dining operation. So I'm hopeful that by complying with some of the town's requirements, that hopefully that will help address some of the issues regarding closing hour and safety with our neighbor, and having a continual conversation with them about enforcement of parking. The parking studies have been done, as you know, and I think I might have mentioned last time, and I'm sure it's in one of our letters to you. We we can't violate our leases. We have a very heightened level of not wanting to have a parking problem. We need to make this work. We can't be in violation of our leases and default on leases by violating parking. And by having continual monitoring and good dialogue with our neighbor and trying to put things in place on us so that we are enforcing the fact that people are parking in our space and we're being good neighbors, I'm hopeful that we can have a long-term great relationship with our neighbor.
And if I may, one more question, Madam Chair. One of the recommendations was a dedicated staff member in case there were problems. And if there's a restaurant problem, I assume they would go to Mr. Welch. But if it's a general parking issue, let's say it's 8 o'clock at night, who would they go to? How would a neighbor know whether it's your problem or Mr. Welch's problem?
So I could certainly let Andrew answer our portion.
Okay.
From the property owner's perspective, we have a hotel there where it's staffed all the time, 24/7. There's a night auditor throughout the night. And we have hotel guests there that can't be disturbed, and they need to be provided with their parking. We've done parking counts and parking studies and everything, but we have a staff on site. The hotel is certainly one of the biggest uses that are there. The restaurant is not one of the biggest uses that are there. The hotel is one of the biggest uses that is there, and that staff there would hopefully be involved in that oversight. I've talked to our GM about that actually today, and left a message for our neighbor about the fact that I've talked to our GM about that. So I think it'd be operationally to say, look, we're hiring one specific parking guard would be kind of onerous, but certainly us as the property owner and being very involved in the hotel and having the hotel staffed 24/7, there are people there that can help with this enforcement to making sure that our parking doesn't bleed out to other places that it shouldn't. We can't always control the public, of course, but what we can do is remind people and encourage them and make the way of things that parking should, especially for hotel guests, that parking occurs on our property. We have the sufficient parking for it, and that's where you have to park.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I'm reading the time that you're going to be open here, and it says you'll be open from 11 a.m. until 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. on Friday, 9 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. on Saturday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Sunday. I don't know that you were present when we first went over this whole thing where they wanted to add these buildings. But we were told at that time that there would be no conflict because the office building would be operating in the daytime, the motel would be operating at night, period. We now have, based on Andrew's track record, what I will assume is going to be a very successful restaurant. And you have 82 seats in that restaurant. And if you have one car per two people, that's a lot of cars. And no matter what you do, if I want to eat in his restaurant and I don't have any parking there, and there's a big parking lot right across the street and nobody's there because it's 7 o'clock at night, I'm probably going to go over there. So how do you help them avoid that?
It's really hard for me to counter terms like that on the parking when the parking study supports what we're trying to do. I think from a hotel perspective, you can certainly do things to whether it be, making sure that your hotel guest cars are identified and that they're parking in the lot. Having a close relationship with our neighbor is another one of enforcement. Having the hotel staff there aware that parking can't bleed out to other places is another one. But it's really hard. It's hard for me to argue something when the parking study says it's supported when we're talking about public behavior that's up in the air.
Well, notwithstanding the parking study, let me ask some fairly simple questions. How many parking spots are used for the tenant's use of the existing new building?
So I don't want to violate any terms of leases and things, but.
Well, if we walked out there and looked at the parking, we
Yeah.
could count them. That's not very confidential.
Right, and right now, I'm out there a lot, and there's not a whole lot being used, and it's a daytime use.
How many approximately are being used?
Today, I think I saw in front of their building, I think I saw 4,
So this whole, I forget how many thousand square feet it is, but it's fairly good.
almost 9,000.
And there's 4 people work there?
That's what I saw today, but again, it's like, I mean, that doesn't mean it's going to be like that all the time.
And it's a
That's what I saw.
dialysis building. People come in and have work done?
Yes,
So when you say 4
I saw 4 cars in front of their building, whether these are non-exclusive spaces, so they could have been parking elsewhere as well.
And you don't know how many employees there are at the dialysis?
Not off the top of my head, no. But I know what we limit them to is parking, and I know that we can't violate their leases parking. We can't violate any lease with Andrew with
Okay,
parking as well.
and how many, I forget how many rooms are in the newly reduced motel?
48.
And we're going to have 82 seats in the restaurant, and we have this, I have no idea what the number is for the dialysis, and you don't either, apparently.
Well, it's a 16-seat dialysis center. So,
Okay, so if we
plus,
had
and let's call it a few
16
staff.
cars, plus the 4 staff would be 20.
Which a lot of, and I don't know the percentage on this, but a lot of them get dropped off. So it might be a drop-off situation where it's not necessarily going to be a one-for-one.
I guess something like 130 parking spaces.
Another piece of this is timing. So as dialysis finishes, let's call it 6 o'clock, and our parking need doesn't, we counted cars for 4 years, 4+ years, every hour from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Again, we can't have a parking problem, so we want to understand it. The need for our parking really swells almost in the middle of the night to 7 a.m. in the morning.
Well, you've never had lunch there before, have you? You've never had a restaurant there before?
No, we've not had a restaurant there.
You had an occupancy factor that you came in and told us was killing you because there weren't enough people.
I'm telling you, when we've had 100% occupancy back when we were 50+ rooms, there are times we had 100% occupancy, even though our occupancy wasn't good back then, but there were times when we had a lot of cars in the parking lot.
When you appeared before us, you gave us a vacancy factor of over 40%.
Oh, you're talking about in 2006, 2007 timeframe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so, but now you've reduced the number. I guess, how many parking spaces do you have on site or will you have on site?
Right now it's 75 is how it is, and I think with this drawing it'd be 73.
Okay, thank you.
Let me, if I could, I'll ask a couple of questions as well. And this is more in terms of operationally, because I know, Mr. Welch, you commented about how you would run the operation. As I take a look at your floor plan, first of all, I'm disappointed that it's not finalized. So what I hear tonight is there's going to be some shifting. I'm also disappointed that your architect is not here. So, or maybe your architect is here. Okay, so that might also solve some of our issues. But what I want to talk about is the actual operation of the restaurant, and I appreciate the fact that your fish are going to come in whole and et cetera. Well, where are they going to make all of these deliveries? Because I don't see the back entrance on these drawings, which means everything is going to come through the front.
Well, the one thing we can do, which is really nice about companies that want your business, and I have a lot of relationships with my fish purveyor, Greenleaf, you name it, I can set strict times of when they can come and deliver. I get my deliveries every day, so they're quick. They're not big Cisco buy right, sit there for an hour, unload type deliveries. So we can definitely put strict rules on the times that they're delivered and have them received in and out very quickly.
Well, all I'm saying is, are they going to park on the street, or are they parking in this parking lot? I just want to know conceptually, how do you think this is going to happen?
I am a person who's seen we've all seen delivery trucks and what they're going to do. I could tell you where they're going to park, but I would not be telling you the truth if a delivery person's not going to make whatever works when he shows up to do it, just like they do in every other city. I could work towards a plan that would work for the neighbors, for the residents, for the parking, to ensure they do go to a certain space, but I don't have a plan in place right now exactly where you would want them to be, or I'd want them to be. I want them just to, my purpose now is to get my product and not be a nuisance.
No, I understand that. And one of the complaints that we often have when there's delivery trucks and other business trying to go on is the fact that the delivery trucks, you're absolutely right, sir. I mean, they try and get in and out, and they're going to park whatever inch they can find is the inch they're going to take. But the beverage trucks are always large. Mm-hmm. They're not small. The fishmonger maybe has a little van, but the beverage trucks will not. So I'm thinking about that roadway in and out, and how many trucks are going to be lined up there at what time of day, because we do have rush hour and school going on. So I just wanted to address that with you.
We can control that by the times in place. This is a specialty restaurant, so again, I'm not having the bigger, larger trucks come through. I'm not planning on having keg service, so you're not going to see that type of delivery. I have no intention of having shot glasses or tequila or anything like that. I will have single malt scotch delivered, which will be from probably Southern or Young's, which are the larger trucks. Most of my purveyors are small specialty purveyors, and we can work to control the time with recommendations.
Okay, so now I have another question, because I can't see it on the drawing. Where are your trash bins going to be? Where are you going to break down your wine bottles, et cetera? I just don't see it on here, so I'm just asking operationally that question.
Can I just address a real quick point on the delivery trucks?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can I address the real quick point on the delivery trucks?
Yeah.
Based on what Andrew's saying, if we had time of day delivery, during the day, there's virtually no cars there for the hotel guests. So there's actually quite a bit of parking available in the parking lot. So there's a lot of space that's there during the day. So if deliveries are coordinated correctly, I don't see that being a big issue. Regarding garbage, in the original approved plan, there's a trash enclosure that is next to the 8,800 square foot building. It's not on this drawing here. If anything, it would probably have been on the site plan drawings that you might have seen last time, but there's I'll call it a very nice, well-constructed trash enclosure. It's brand new, it was built with the construction,
Just as I'm looking at this plan, can you tell me, is it to the right or to the left?
At this plan, if you're facing the front, if you're facing the front entry directly, it is behind you on the other. I think that would technically be, I believe, is at the southeast of the property. It is not. I mean, it's
So,
across the parking
right.
lot all the way over next to the
All right.
other side.
So they will wheel the trash out, basically, through the front
would-
door?
They would have to.
I always prefer the trash as far away from my space as possible.
No, I
So-
understand that. I'm just thinking that you're going to be pushing it out through your dining room, but, I'm going to leave it to you to, that's an operational issue. It just occurred to me where the bottle breaking will take place as well. Because I know with the wine bottles, they're in the recycle bins.
Right, we don't break bottles at the restaurant. They would be just put in the bottle bins whole, and what happens in the pickup, I actually have more frequent pickups than normal for most restaurants. I'd rather pay the extra small fee to make sure it's constantly clean and constantly being picked up.
So it's on the opposite side from the residence is what I'm trying to figure out as well.
It's on the opposite side of the residence. It's on the opposite side of the hotel, so it's not right next to the hotel guests. It's right
All
by
right.
the old retail building.
Okay. Commissioner Telesfor.
A follow-up to that, going back to your delivery trucks, because I'm concerned about the circulation, not only within the restaurant, but also within your site. And you presently have delivery trucks now, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and what is there, I mean, do you see adding into your delivery trucks, additional delivery trucks? I mean, but I'd like to know that. I mean, have you thought that through? I mean, as a commissioner, we need to be assured that it's all going to fit and work well, that it operates in a safe manner.
And us as property owners have an equally high concern for that. We don't want liabilities associated with things like that. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a fully operational hotel. It's been operating during construction for all these years. So they're very adept at getting deliveries in during very difficult times on the property. And now we're hopefully looking forward to having more free access to the property as construction finishes. So absolutely, deliveries have been made for years, and I've never seen it be a problem.
All right, so what I'm going to recommend, we've all asked our questions, and Mr. Shank, if you and Mr. Welch will have a seat, and you're going to have 3 minutes to address us again, so maybe you want to think about anything you might not have thought to tell us. And so let me also call Pat Lynch.
Hi, I'm
And,
Pat,
yes,
Pat
Ms.
Lynch with CWA Realty.
Thank you.
I'm that commercial property across the street at 401, 405, 409 Alberta Way. I'm the author of the letter you have. First of all, I'd like to thank Joel for putting a package together for us. the town or the planning department for all your scrutiny. Your questions tonight are right on target. I don't know if you got the answers you wanted, but it certainly raised more of what we had. I will also thank John, who spent some time with us yesterday, going over our letter and our concerns. And there's just a couple points. I'm not going to belabor a lot here. We're still against the to-go window. We still don't think the patio is a great idea. We'd still like to see alcohol stopped at 10 o'clock, and I do understand, having worked in the industry, that means the last order you take is at 10 o'clock. It won't necessarily be the last drink that you serve, but once they're in at 10, you take them and take care of them. So to that, we know we can't do much about this. John has assured us that he's got things in place. We've unfortunately lived through 8 years of construction and lived with the reality of all those questions you asked today. We've dealt with them all, and it's been a challenge. And we know we've got another year or so of construction before this happens, and then the operation. The parking, when you add up the spaces, doesn't look like it handles everybody to us, but timing is everything, as they say. But if everybody in there is as successful as they want to be, it's not going to get covered. And there's not, at nighttime, any extra parking on Alberta Way. Our parking lot has been the default parking lot for years. So we thank you guys for your effort. We know you can only do what you can do, and all we ask is that when we come back and apply for our defensible barrier to protect our parking, that you remember us and you help us.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Don't leave, because I don't
Sorry.
know if anyone else has a question. Well, it looks like two commissioners do, and then I'll ask my question. Commissioner Sayak?
Thank you for your letter. The majority of your business, those that occupy your property,
What's the
On a-
makeup?
what's the makeup? And on average, what time do you think most of them leave? So when do you think you have the least amount of cars in your parking space?
It used to be we were pretty much an 8 to 5, but with the change in economy and the kind of tenants we have, I have a lot of therapists. I have probably a dozen therapists, and they run into the evening hours, and they do work on Saturdays, not so much on Sundays. They tend to use the front parking lot, which is going to be the first line of where anybody's going to go, because it's the easiest way across the street and closest to where they want to go. So right now, we have people from 7 o'clock in the morning until 9:30 at night, Monday through Thursday. Friday night's probably a little earlier than that. And then Saturdays, I start to see therapists wandering in about 9 o'clock, and they're there till 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
How many parking spaces do you have? That's a fairly good-sized lot that you have.
I'm thinking it's 235 to 240.
And after 5 o'clock in the evening, notwithstanding you do have people there, I understand,
Yes.
what percentage of those spots do you actually use?
There's probably 80% of the parking lot, you can safely say, is available most of the time. And then on Sundays, it's pretty much open. I do have neighbors who park in our parking lot. It's been people we've allowed over the years, people who do it by default. I can't be there 24/7 to guard the entrances.
Well, one of the things you asked was putting in a barrier, for example, having controlled parking. Have you also considered renting some space to?
Nobody's come up with that idea or that offer to us.
Obviously, if you put in a barrier, they may come up with that, so. Your letter, I think, raises questions that are insoluble, no matter what your
We
neighbor
do.
does.
Correct. That's the public, and there's...
However, if in fact it turns out that everything is as I'm worried it's going to be, I'm worried it's going to be a big success. That's not a normal worry. But if it's a big success, then there's really going to be traffic problems. Those traffic problems would be greatly assisted by having additional parking. And since you're there and you're not adverse to renting some parking space, there are some possibilities here. So I just wanted to get that out.
There are. I don't know what we're allowed to do from a standpoint with the town, but...
I don't either.
Yeah, so, but yeah, that's there, but, you know, we have to wait. Like you say, if it's successful, then that becomes the next
You've also
solution.
said that you don't want the walk-up, and it looks to me like you may not have to worry about the walk-up. but I don't quite understand the objection to the outside eating.
That's more of an ambience thing. And having heard from the restaurateur now, I don't think it's going to be an issue because I don't think this is what he wants. But it's more that you would have motel people on the weekends out there, and then it gets busy and they walk off, and then they're, over on our grounds, or people, the takeout window in conjunction brings people back over. I assume the takeout window, well, I've heard it's two things. It's for other people coming up to pick up food, but also for the guests to, for the room service. And if it's people, like, we have been behind this, they approached us from the get-go about having a dining place that, people in our complex could come for lunch or could come over and get something to eat. There's a safety issue trying to get across Alberta Way. And I just, that's a bigger concern to me in everything that we've talked about here, is that in somebody dashing over to get some food and going back across, or parking in our parking lot and dashing back at night, it's not as well lit. When you get oversized vehicles parked on the street, the visibility is challenged. I just don't want to see anybody hurt in addition. So I would like to also add, if we were to do a parking situation for them, it's going to have to be with a valet, because having the public on the grounds open to use whatever isn't going to work. It's going to have to be some kind of confined environment to limit the exposure of people running across Alberta Way, because it's a challenge right now. It's a challenge getting out of the driveways. I pointed that out in the letter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Lynch, I just want to follow up on something Commissioner O'Donnell said, because there are certain situations in town already where parking spaces are made available to a business that has more of an evening business. And so if the property owners were amenable to some kind of leasing of spaces after X hours, I think we could go a long way to feeling better, at least about the parking. I do note your safety issues, however, and I want to go also, if I could just ask you the question, because you raised it, of the large delivery trucks, because it's on my mind as well. And so your experience so far has been that they pull into your lot and then they do what? They truck the materials across that street?
No. It's very hard to get into their driveway with some of the big trucks. This week, 2 weeks ago, after your last meeting, in fact, J.J. Albany showed up with a tractor backhoe on a trailer that had to be 25, 30 feet long with a tractor on front of it, and to try and back into that driveway. They can't do it. They got to pull into my driveway. And I literally had to throw my body in front of the truck and say, it's not happening anymore, boys. And they came out, they apologized, they made it happen. There's a turnaround that nobody uses at the end of that street for fire, so they could turn around that equipment and head in to their driveway and offload and use their turnaround, but that's not what happens. We've got two driveways right there, and it's not just them. It's every guy hauling cars on car carriers that gets on Alberta Way and realizes that's not where he's supposed to be, and they come right through our driveway. I've had a tenant for 3 years with small children in that parking lot, and we have sweated for 3 years, children getting run over by this trucks coming through the parking lot. And I can't be at both locations nonstop catching these guys. So that's where this is coming from. I've lived with this, and it was, we didn't want to have to call every time somebody violated something, but it's just, it's gotten to us. And so that's why the letter, we, as I said, we didn't voice it now, we knew we'd never be heard again. So.
All right. Commissioner Talis-For.
Right. Thank you for coming down. Referring to your letter again to number 4, and you ask why the need for a bar. So after hearing tonight that the bar has been moved, it's been reduced in size and scope, and they will be complying with all of our alcohol policies, are you any more comfortable with this?
I am. That part of the bar came up from I wasn't here at the last meeting because I didn't get my notice. It was a public meeting, even though John had called me, but I couldn't. But I watched the video feed, and I saw the whole issue with that bar and I wholeheartedly agreed. So that's part of what 4 is, hearing what kind, and again, we didn't know what kind of a restaurant was going in. But also, I'm going to go back to something that you guys brought up. This use stays with that property. So once you allow a restaurant and that in there, it's in. And if this restaurant doesn't make it and the next one comes in, has more of a bar activity, then now we're kind of dealing with that. So this operation, to my way of thinking, sounds fine, as long as we have a cap on the length of time and we have somebody who's going to monitor the parking and all that sort of thing.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. You can take a seat now. I appreciate your comments. We're now going to give the applicant 3 minutes to address us, and anything you might have thought about Mr. Shank that you want us to know.
Sure, thank you. You know, I got to tell you, I mean, in the end, we've spent a long time on this project. We've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and capital into it, as I think hopefully you've seen. We've taken something, I mean, I was looking at our Yelp reviews before before this hotel got upgraded. I mean, it was basically referenced as like hell on earth. And now we're getting reviews that say like, this is, you know, this is a classy place where people can come and get a good value and be in Los Gatos. And we're just getting great reviews. And I'm hoping that it appears to you just how hard we're trying on this. I think at the beginning, I don't think you thought our concept was baked enough, and hopefully we've now gone a heck of a long way in solidifying, even though there might be some plus or minus issues on the feet. So I just want to get that across to you. We're trying to take a place up to a level worthy of our new tenant, frankly, and we're just excited about him being part of this. So a few things on parking. There's been a lot of parking studies, a lot of invoices we've received for parking studies, and they all seem to support what we're doing. We've dropped from 60 rooms down to 48 rooms. If you go there during the day, I think hopefully, have you guys been there during the day and seen that you could drive around and park in probably 50 parking spots during the day at least? I'm hopeful that you think you have done that. I think that obviously helps with the deliveries aspect. And I'm going quick because I want to yield some time here to Andrew. I will say, you know, I think we have had a good relationship with Pat. I'm thankful that she's chosen to speak. I will say her letter was more vehement than I thought it would be. And she has approached me, and I've called her on some issues over time, and I can appreciate the fact that she needs to speak at this, and I certainly respect her, and I want and the building ownership. And so, but I will say it came across as really a heavy letter that it goes far beyond some of the issues that I knew about, which is why I'm glad we got to spend some time yesterday speaking, and we'll obviously want to be good neighbors. And the demo's done, and so I think hopefully construction traffic is going to be fairly limited with that.
And I totally get the stress that Pat must have experienced, and I'm not a part of building out the hotel and refurbishing, but that part's almost done, thank goodness. You know, the working together, figuring out systems is always a very important thing in any business. I have learned so much over the last 20 years. I'm so glad I did not go where Monreese is now, because it probably would have been a disaster, but I'm certainly happy to be where I'm at. And you know, I think about hotel deliveries, what could they really be? Maybe they have some sort of concessions or linens or whatnot, but I'm sure we could work together to make sure that we could share a linen truck that was coming at the same time and cut that down. So I think at the end of the day, there's the spaces there, and there's a great communication. I am an operator that is 47 years old. I don't want to be serving late night drinks. I brought a couple letters today that I would love to hand everyone. And it's not to sell you on me, because I think these gentlemen deserve to have a place to support their hotel that they put a lot of time and money and effort into. But it's just to point out the type of clientele that I have in my life and what I want coming to the restaurant. We have a super high-end clientele, very business-oriented, And what's great about it is they love it so much that they bring in their business dinners and they come back with their families to enjoy the atmosphere that we create.
Mr. Welch, I do have to stop you because the light has gone off. I let you go on, and we probably have a couple of questions for
Sure,
you too,
sure.
all right? So, yes, Commissioner Birch?
So I would like to know the percentage of time that you plan to be there, since now you're going to have the basin and the new restaurant. Will you have a manager at the basin and you're going to be full-time down here ensuring that things are happening the way you're?
So I'm hoping to have a good 10 months based on when we finally know we can go forward, or even whatever the time may be. I have a great team in play right now. I love physically being there. I love touching everybody. I love saying hello. I love doing the product. It's just a time in my life where I'm going to be closer to this project. I've been in the same place for 15 years. My lease at my other property is going to run down at a certain point. I might not re-up it. There's 5 years left. And I do have a team in place right now that allows me to take 12 days off and go on a honeymoon and do things like that. And I can add to that. And what's really neat about that is I can bring people in over this time period and get them trained and doing things and giving the love the way we do it now, as opposed to most restaurants open, they scramble, they bring in too many people, they've got to train them. The first six months is often a train wreck. I'm hoping to have the opportunity to train through my current restaurant, get them to understand the quality that we're going for while this restaurant's being built out the way we want it to be, leaving in place most of my key people that are there now to keep it going while I phase that out. So my goal is to be here probably 90% of the time.
And a follow-up with that, earlier in the discussion when we were talking about the hours, you've mentioned a couple times that 10 o'clock. Obviously, in here, it's got longer hours, and you've mentioned that you don't want to be there late. You want to go home. So are the hours of operation that we have in Exhibit 10 till 11 or 11:30, are those accurate? Because it sounds like this was perhaps put together prior to your input.
There's two ways of looking at it. I think that verbiage needs to be very clear when you write up the CUP, obviously. What I'm saying is I'm willing to take reservations up to 10 o'clock. This is a reservation-based restaurant. Obviously, if someone called me and said, hey, I'm going to be there at 10, put my order in, I'm coming from the San Jose airport, I want to take care of them. But once they've sat down, they're going to enjoy a meal. I want to be able to serve them once they're in the restaurant. I don't need to keep the doors unlocked until 11:30, but I want to allow people to come in, enjoy, sit by 10 o'clock, and be able to enjoy their meal for an hour and a half. So it depends on how you look at the hours structured.
Well, so that is a bit of what I'm trying to ferret out here. So at 10 o'clock, people would stop walking in the door, and right.
Yeah.
So because I'm looking at this counter bar thing, and which I think is a great concept at a hotel. But would you, if you're saying reservations stop at 10, are you going to let the stragglers come in at 10:45 to sit there, or can we, as a commission, feel comfortable that it's only going to be those that have been in at 10 are going to be able to continue their service until 11 or 11?
I know you hear a lot of people telling you a lot of things, and I've looked at some past people that have spoken lately, and I listen to what they say, and there's no way they could properly run a business, pay their bills, and they say things just to get by. Mm-hmm. If I have John showing up at 10:30, do I want to let him in necessarily? No, because I want to go home. Is he going to come in and sit late? Absolutely not. My goal will be, just like at the Basin now, I have the right to serve until 2 a.m. I don't like that. If you come by the Basin, the doors are locked at 10 o'clock, lock and key. There are people after 15 years that go around, find their sideway. I don't see that as much in this new project because that's a precedent and it's a different type of location. And a lot of that were people coming down from the mountain winery just trying to find their way in. We don't have that location here. And it's, for me personally, I really want to have people sitting no later than 10. Even 9:30 is a dream, but I can't say that to you. But sitting no later than 10, enjoying another hour and a half of a great dinner, calling it a day. I'm going to be there operating it. I do not want to be serving past then. And I have a theory, which is played out in life, which is why we do lock our doors, Anybody coming in my doors after 11:30, I generally do not want in that restaurant. I don't know how much they've had to drink. It's not what we do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Talasfor.
As a follow-up to that, and I totally understand it, you're very experienced, you know what you like. However, this would be a CUP, and if you should ever decide to retire and sell, it'll go to someone else. So, but with that being said, this hours of operation to 11 p.m., does that mean to me that the staff is gone? Everyone is gone, the restaurant is dark?
No, it does not mean
Okay,
that.
that's-
I am an exceptionally clean restaurant. That place has to be broken down from the inside. Everything is left spotless. It takes an hour and a half, 2 hours. We have to scrub
Okay,
everything
so this would be, all right,
down.
this would be servicing
Now,
patrons.
most of the staff would be gone. We phase people
Right.
out. Their tables are
Okay.
gone, this and that. This is not a big footprint, though, so I don't.
And then another question, and maybe this applies to both of you. I understand the concept of the to-go because I'm going to understand, I think, that you don't have room service, correct?
This is intended to be that function.
Right, that's how I interpreted the to-go, which was sort of a clever idea, on the other hand. So what is your concept for serving? Is your concept then there'll be no service inside rooms? Everything will have to be served here in the restaurant? Or they can come down and get a bag of food and take it to the restaurant and?
We thought very simply, we thought it'd be a nice option for people that are staying at a hotel to not have to enter the restaurant
Okay.
and just go pick it up, and then for people from the public just to pop out, pick up their food and go. So we'd hopefully,
You'll have to think about
That's how
that.
we-
I have a
that was the
feeling,
premise of it.
I'm hearing, I was looking
Not
at
to
one.
contradict each other, but
Right.
if I am
I
the
can see
operator, I don't want that window. That was a great idea, and I think that I want to put something in place where the hotel guests know, call ahead of time, we'll have it ready for you. Call as you're coming from the airport to get there, we'll have it ready for you.
Okay, well, that's actually a nice service.
trying to answer your question, and I
Yeah.
think I obviously defer to Andrew
Okay.
on function.
So another function, can you explain to me just a little, I see 3 tables out here in your entry patio. Is that what you intend? 3 tables, or, period?
12 seats.
12 seats at the most, but I mean, will they be tables? Would they be lounges? Sometimes we see drawings like this, and then the next thing we know, we have fire pits and, yeah, I know. I know what it says.
Paying the bills as such, I have not personally measured this area. Paying the bills as such, I don't want to lounge anything. I want people in a table dining and eating. It's too hard to pay bills where people are just hanging out doing nothing. So there will definitely not be a lounge. And the 3-table, conceptually, I would like to think there'd be a 4th table, but
Okay,
there'll definitely
all
be
right.
dining
So you
tables.
understand that it's, we're seeing nothing that's, things may change is the impression I'm getting from both of you with this drawing that we have in front of us.
We're approving it.
No, if we approve this, it can't change, but in your discussion,
only from a space standpoint, as I don't know how big they scaled these tables. So I'm not saying, I'm not,
Okay.
I can't say to you there's only going to be 3 tables.
all right,
will
just
those-
so you understand that.
Right.
This is what we're approving.
Right.
Okay, all right, we don't change walls and stuff. Okay, thank you.
I just have one comment to make to you and then a question. And the comment I want to make is that the dialysis center is not up and running yet at full capacity. And it's building. I just happen to know that industry from the life I have outside of the Planning Commission. So you'll see more than 4 cars there on a very frequent basis. So I know that from my own knowledge. My question about the patio is, if we were to take the patio away, that means we're taking 12 seats away. You're talking about very tight margins to run a profitable restaurant. So talk to me, with as few sentences as possible, how...
Me, a few sentences? Okay. I believe in energy, and whether I could pay the bills without that patio or not, I think the energy of having the patio makes it work. And I don't want to operate a restaurant that could have a patio there that doesn't have it. People love being able to go outside, even if it's for a moment, and it's about an experience. We don't want to just have a place for people to come and eat if they could have all the experiences they possibly could have.
When I first saw this, I'll just tell you, I thought of people picking up their food at the to-go window and sitting down at an empty patio table to eat. So just,
That'd be a door closer.
I understand. So that's just something I want to make a comment on. All right, I think we have covered as many questions as we have. Oh, I'm sorry, Charles, I didn't see you down there. Commissioner Erickson.
I want to be sure I understood something correctly earlier, Mr. Shank. So the traffic study was done assuming 75 parking spaces. There will be ultimately only 73, is that correct?
I think it was done on 75, but it was also done, I think, on 95-seat restaurant and a 50-room hotel.
Okay.
So, yes, with the extra piece of information.
Okay,
or two.
thank you.
Gentlemen, you may have a seat, and we're now going to close the public portion of the public hearing and ask the commissioners if they have questions of staff, want to comment on the application, or want to introduce a motion for consideration. Commissioner Erickson.
So to my fellow commissioners, I'm prepared to make a motion in the spirit of moving it along to the ultimate deciding body and not continuing this item to the Planning Commission, but I would wait to hear comments from my fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Erickson, I'd like you to make your motion, and then we can see if we can get a second, and then we can have a full discussion, all right?
I'm happy to do that. So I will move to recommend approval of conditional use permit U-13-018 to the town council. And I'm going to make the required findings, or suggest the required findings first, and then I'm going to make some modifications to the conditions of approval. So my understanding is that we could make a required finding that there's no further environmental analysis required because there was that was taken care of in conjunction with the PD. We could make the required finding for the redevelopment plan for the central Los Gatos redevelopment area as is specified in exhibit number 9. And I can make the required findings. I think we can make the required findings for a conditional use permit, particularly as it relates to item number 1 and item number 2, as in the staff report. Now, with respect to the conditions of approval, I would suggest the following modifications to the conditions of approval. In item number 6, that item number 6 be changed to reduce the maximum number of seats to 70, and the wording say inclusive of the restaurant, dining bar, and private dining room. That implies that there would be no seating in the patio area. That the hours of operation will remain the same, and I'm assuming, and after I make the motion, I'll assume that if I'm making the wrong assumption, that the staff will correct my assumption, and that when we have hours of operation, it means that if the hours of operation end at 11 p.m., that service ends at 11 p.m. I assume that's what I'm assuming. When the operator chooses to lock the front door is not regulated, but that the service ends when the hours of operation end. That item number 8 would be modified to say alcoholic beverage service is allowed in the restaurant dining room, in the dining bar, and private dining room only in conjunction with meal service until 10 p.m. because I don't believe we can make the required findings for late night alcohol service. And that item number 11 would be removed. And that, and I would leave this to staff to incorporate this in the appropriate way, that there would be no to-go window. No to-go window.
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson. Do we have a second for Commissioner Erickson's motion? All right, Commissioner Erickson, well, I will second your motion in order to move the matter along. So now let's open for discussion. Commissioner Sayak.
Thank you. I do have questions of Commissioner Erickson. The removal of the 12 seats in the patio, was that because you don't think that we could make the findings for the late night alcohol service, therefore, or is it simply, or was it to accommodate the parking concern, or is there a third option?
I had two reasons for making that. One, I don't think it's possible to meet the building code requirements for exit from the second story with the drawing that we've been presented. So we can't act upon a drawing which we have not been presented with. So we've been presented with a drawing that shows ADA access through the patio area up to the second floor and through that area for the motel. So there's no way that I can understand that they can meet the requirements of the alcohol beverage service policy of the town, not the ABC, through that area. Also, reducing the number of seats in the restaurant helps address the squeeze on parking.
And a follow-up
Certainly.
through that. And actually, procedurally, if I have a follow-up that is to staff, should I ask it now or should I
Yes.
wait?
Yes.
Process-wise, understanding that we have to approve the plans that are before us, but as it develops, if staff finds that it can't meet code, for example, how do you work with that? Do you modify it and bring it back to us, or is there some other route that the concept is approved and you just work within it? So.
Depends on the extent of the changes necessary to accommodate those requirements.
Okay, so specifically the ADA requirements in the patio area.
So again, depending on how minor, there's got to be a landing at the bottom of the stairs for ADA that I can't remember the dimensions, either 3 foot or 4 foot. So that slider theoretically could just be shrunk a little bit to give more wall to put that there. And then you have the ADA wraps around the staircase there to the ADA space, which may or may not meet that. If it was that kind of change to these plans as approved, that would be something that staff would probably feel comfortable doing at a building permit level as this moved forward. If they had to, completely remove the slider and or have some other accommodation where you were originally showing seats in that patio area that couldn't be accommodated at all, or some other configuration that pushed them to the edges that created challenges, again, we'd have to look at that on a case-by-case basis and see if that's something that we would be willing to approve at staff level, or whether that have to go to planning commission and or council.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Number one, I think the applicant's request for outside dining is a reasonable request. Certainly his restaurant, the basement has some outside dining, which is actually very good, and I think he probably, I personally think it's nice to have some outside dining. If, in fact, the 70 is the magic number that the maker of the motion would be comfortable with, that still works. I'm not sure where it came from. Well, it came from if you get rid of 12. But the distribution of the 70, I would not be concerned with how it's distributed, but would leave it to the restaurateur. So I would not support the motion if, in fact, it says there is no outside dining. I won't deal with the 70 versus 82 because we're not there yet. On the stairwell, I would be comfortable with simply conditioning the approval such that the stairwell would not enter into the enclosed patio area. On the other hand, under the motion, there is no enclosed patio area because there's no alcohol. But I'm just saying, if we get to the point where we can say, yes, you can have patio dining, I think you could still do that by conditioning the plans such that there are a couple of ways that could be easily done, I think. If not, then they'd have to come back. Also, we talked about if there were a patio dining, there would have to be a barrier as you move along the ADA walkway, which the applicant said they would be happy to do. So that's something I would consider too. The delivery hours, we didn't talk about, but I think we ought to condition the delivery hours. And very frankly, since the applicant here is also the owner of the motel, I think the delivery of, for both properties should be conditioned. And then I would like to see it come back to us a year after opening, because I am very concerned about the parking, notwithstanding studies. And if, in fact, the studies are right, then a year from now or a year from the date of opening, the studies will be borne out. If they're not, I think the applicant will have to consider what to do about that. I have real hesitation to approve this. Now, if it goes down to 70, maybe I don't have the same thing. But again, I would be in favor of allowing the patio dining, which could get us to 82, but 70. If it's 70, I'm not as concerned about the parking. So I guess what I'm throwing out here is one more thing, and that is the applicant, and actually the restaurateur, said he would essentially close his doors at 10. I like that condition. Now, if in addition to that, you need to say, and all the guests will be gone by 11 or 11:30, depending on the timing here, I guess that's okay. But I like the concept of no more taking of reservations for people after 10, and I certainly agree with the 10 o'clock alcohol service in any event. So I just throw those things out for consideration. We do have a motion, we do have a second. I will not support the motion in its present condition.
Commissioner O'Donnell, if I could just ask you a question, so I'm sure, since I seconded the motion, are you recommending that, I just want to be clear, ending alcohol service at 10 and ending food service by 11? Did I hear that correctly?
I'm perfectly willing to go along with that. My view, I guess, would be that if you don't take reservations after 10, I really don't care how long the people stay there, because you're going to stop serving alcohol at 10. You're not going to take any new guests after 10. I'm sure they want to get them out of there in an hour and a half. But if that's important to somebody, that's fine. I just don't think it's necessary.
So the important part was the 10 o'clock end of
10
alcohol
o'clock,
service.
two things that happens at 10 o'clock. One, you take no new guests. Two, you serve no alcohol after 10. If you do that, I think your 11:30 thing is not important. You could leave it, but I don't think it's important anymore.
Commissioner Talasfor?
I do have questions of staff, and then I can say, first of all, I wanted to ask if the staff knows the hours of operation for the dialysis center that's there currently. That would be integral
I
to.
believe it's open till 6 or 7. I'd have to go back and read their letter. We have a letter that specifies that information, but it's not conditioned.
So they can.
That does not
if they
require, it
needed
did not
to-
require a conditional use permit. It is primarily a daytime use.
Okay, but, all right, so that could be questionable, perhaps. Then I had another question that I totally forgot. But anyway, I'm comfortable, Commissioner O'Donnell, you talked about the one-year review, and that is in here for the conditions of approval, number 14. So you could be, did you want something more than that?
We should be clear as to what that means, and
Okay.
if we're concerned, and as I am, about the parking, maybe we just embellish that to make it clear, because I'm not sure what they do if a year from opening, not from the date of the granting of the CUP, the date of opening, we say, oh my gosh, and I've seen this happen. Success breeds cars.
Yes.
Then we'd want to revisit this.
Right, and I would agree, okay, then that's, if, we need to tighten that up. I think that when the gentlemen were talking, and I asked them about deliveries, Andrew said that he would be happy to work with Mr. Schenk on sharing deliveries, especially with linens, and I would hope that you would do that with everything if you can. You can see how concerned we are about that. So, and I can't support the motion because of that outdoor patio. I would like to have that, I mean, the inn, as we're calling it now, has really done a nice job of upscaling itself. And I appreciate that. And especially in this town, it seems like eating outside is something that's pleasurable to everybody. This is an enclosed patio. It's not right on the street. So the ambiance of it really would do well, I think, with this whole eating area. And I think it would add to it. So I would have a hard time supporting the motion because of that. So I don't know what we can do to massage that.
Commissioner
area.
Talisberg, can I just ask you, are you comfortable with the 70 seats versus the 82? Or are you
Well,
saying that
yeah,
the
that's
patio adds the extra seating?
Yeah, the patio would add the extra seating, which is why I asked about the hours of operations for the dialysis, because it seems like we would have enough space to have that outdoor patio area, plus the fact that if the parking across the street might entertain some ideas about being creative about sharing some parking, it could work. You know, and we have to remember, too, that there are a lot of residents that live around here that probably would walk to this restaurant.
All right.
And that, to me, is important to them, because they work, and sometimes they don't want to go home and cook.
Isn't the number of seats, however, independent of where they are distributed? In other words, I don't think that the 12 are lockstep tied to the number. I don't know where 70 comes from, except if it's tied to that patio. But if you said, no, he can have his patio and have 12 on the patio, it isn't clear to me whether the maker of the motion would therefore say, well, if we were going to do that, then I want to reduce the overall number from 82 to 70. So I can't guess on that, but I don't know where 70 comes from.
Well, perhaps we can ask the maker of the motion, having heard the comments now about the patio and the seating, if you're interested in modifying your motion.
I guess, so the math was simple for me, Commissioner O'Donnell. There were 12 in the patio, no seating on the patio. 82 minus 12 is 70. Okay, so it wasn't any more complicated than that from my perspective. Because while I share the hypothetical concern about parking, it seems like to me, while it's a concern that I would share, it's a concern which is not borne out by the traffic study, by the by the parking study that was done. So I don't know how we can act upon how we can act upon something where we've got evidence that would suggest to us that there's adequate parking. So if we were going to allow the outdoor patio seating, if we wanted to do that, then I don't see any reason to restrict the number to less than 82. Okay, but I do, in response to Commissioner Sayles' question, if in fact it were 70, because we eliminated those 12s, it mitigates the potential of a parking problem, just because there are less seats. And we don't really have to deal with the issue. We just eliminated that seating, because I don't think the seating in the restaurant doesn't seem to be too dense or too inappropriate or anything. It seems like to me a reasonable layout of a restaurant. My concern about the outdoor patio is I still don't understand how one can meet the requirement of, in any way, and I would have to be shown in a drawing how one can meet the building code, the exiting requirements from the stairway, from the second floor, the ADA requirements, the requirements of the alcohol beverage policy of the town to cordon off that area, all of those things. And in the spirit of my motion was to move it ahead. I'm not actually to the deciding body. So it's when we have two options potentially to deny their request, which I understand would cause them to appeal it, which involves a fine, which involves an appeal fee, to continue the item, doesn't it? It doesn't? Okay, well that's right, okay, it's a recommendation, sorry. Anyway, so we could deny theirs, which would not cause it to go to the town council, though, is that? Oh, it was, it does, okay, all right. So, or we can send it forward to the council and let them address some of the issues. If they want to propose outdoor patio dining, they can do that and come in with full drawings, or they can come back here, and then it'll just delay for the operator and the owner the process where they might eventually get approved. So by sending something forward to the council now, it allows it to move faster for the owner and operator.
Commissioner Sayoc, did I see your hand up or not? No. Okay, Commissioner O'Donnell, and then Commissioner
Responding to-
Birch, and then Commissioner Talasfor.
Okay, responding to your valid concern about you don't know how they would do that. I don't know how they would do that either, but if it's conditioned on their doing it, it's really not our problem. If they can't do it, then it's not approved. You can't get the outside dining if you can't figure out a way to have that stairwell comply with the relevant code's guidelines. So if we said, yes, you can have that patio dining if, one, you've got the barrier we talked about along the ADA walkway, and two, you solve the problem with the stairwell, and three, you make the ABC barrier, which is required. All those things would have to be done. To the extent one or more of them couldn't be done, they couldn't operate that. So I don't know why, and if you wanted to, we could even say, and when you do it, when you draw it up, you will, really hate to have it coming back to us because we're a recommending body, and if we condition it, then it'll be up to the council to figure out, because if I were in their shoes, I'd have it done by the time it got to the council. Then the council can satisfy themselves. So I make that suggestion to you because I think it addresses your concern.
Thank you. Now, Commissioner Birch?
I'm going to express a little frustration here. All of this conversation that you're hearing would have been completely mitigated with an accurate set of drawings. What we're spending entirely too much time talking about is a very simple code issue. And I agree with what Commissioner O'Donnell said. This is an issue that you're going to have to take up with staff. I personally love the patio. I wish it could be bigger. We need more of it in this town. Everybody loves to sit outside. It's a big draw. And I feel a little bit that you've probably caused yourself some headache with it, with this lack of planning on your part for this. I can't support the motion, as I just said, because I love the patio idea, and I'm thrilled that you put sliders. I wish more places would do this. That would open the inside to the outside. I think that's going to be a huge draw. And I suppose, although you've heard a lot about the parking, I think that it's a compliment because we're assuming you're going to be very successful. And I'm going to hope that if you are, that you would look to your neighbors and look at renting some parking spaces, and that by doing that, that could completely end this concern too, and would probably create a very good union between two neighbors. Because I do think you're going to need it. I mean, if you look at the success of the basin, I'm hoping that you can bring that to this area of town that desperately needs it. Those were my comments.
Commissioner Talasfor.
I remembered the question I asked before, and this is to staff. So we have a bar that's been reduced to 24 feet. There's not a condition in about keeping the bar at that length, and sometimes bar number is conditioned. So my question to you is, if this is not conditioned, could somebody, in 10 years come back and move this, or, move it and make it a larger bar somewhere else without coming back to the commission? Can this be done just with a permit?
I would offer the same comment before. It would depend on the extent of the change. If they came in and asked for a 26-foot bar, staff probably wouldn't bring that back to the commission. If they came in and asked for some other number greater than that caused us concern, then again, we would elevate it to that level, and it would probably have to go back to council as well.
Okay, so that's written down, Joel, in case you decide to leave someday. Yeah, we
They
can.
can't do that.
All right, good. Thank you.
All right, so Commissioner Erickson.
With the permission of the seconder of the motion, I'll withdraw my motion.
All right, so now we begin again. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Let me take a shot at it. I'm not going to repeat the necessary findings that Commissioner Erickson very easily stated on the top of my to recommend approval of the CUP to the town council, subject, however, to certain changes. And I'll try to list the changes that we've discussed. One, that there be no walk-up window. Two, that service would not be accepted, i.e. new reservations or new guests after 10 p.m. That the bar be limited to 24 feet. Give or take a couple of inches isn't going to make any difference, but 24 feet. That the parking be revisited approximately 1 year after the restaurant opens for business, and if in fact the parking is spilling out of the property, and for example going across the street, the applicant will have to come up with a recommendation to that, or we will have to reduce the seating. Let's see. Oh, and then as far as the second floor stairwell, this is also conditioned upon that stairwell meeting all applicable codes and regulations to the satisfaction of the town. That the outside tables would in fact be allowed, that is to say for not more than 12 guests. So whether that's 3 tables or 4 tables is not really the issue, it's 12 guests. That the entry to the restaurant be compliant with the alcoholic beverage control regulations, that is to say a barrier is erected so people entering the restaurant will not be entering the patio. That the delivery hours be coordinated between the existing use and this newly proposed use, such that one, it be in the early morning hours, taking into consideration traffic for the 2 immediate, well really 3 immediate schools. And I'll let staff figure out what the timing and with the suggestion of the applicant. See if I forgot anything. That's all I can think of. So that would be the motion.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Birch?
I'll second the motion.
Then Commissioner O'Donnell, I just have a question. No new customers after 10 o'clock. Are you making any, does that relate to alcohol service at all?
If I forgot to say that, and apparently I did, let me make it clear that no alcohol would be served after 10 p.m.
So that would be a condition of approval,
Yes.
which would be a change to condition 8.
Well, the hours of operation, as Commissioner Erickson pointed out, it depends what you mean by hours
No,
of operation.
it's number 8 has to do with the alcohol service.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that the
Yes.
maker of the motion and the seconder are including no alcohol service after 10 p.m. And it already states only in conjunction with meal service.
Right.
All right, so we have a clarity on that. Commissioner Erickson?
So just a point I would suggest to the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion, so that there's not a misunderstanding that puts the operator at a disadvantage. In number 8, with alcohol service, it doesn't include the private dining room, and the private dining room is a specified area in terms of seating. So I assume that they would want to be able to serve alcoholic beverages in the private dining room when the planning commission or someone was having their end of the year party there or something in the private dining room. So I would suggest that be added as an explicit part of condition number 8.
I honestly don't understand that. Could I ask him a question on that? Do
Yes.
you mean after 10?
No at all, because it names in 8, it says the restaurant dining room, dining bar, and outdoor patio. Each of those areas are named and have specified, so I'm just asking to
I
add
appreciate
that.
And I would add
Yeah,
that.
so they're not disadvantaged as an operator.
And the seconder as well? All right, is there any further discussion? Commissioner Tsayak and then Commissioner Talasfor.
Just one clarifying question to the maker of the motion. So if I were to come in at 9:30 and I'm still not finished with my meal, 10 o'clock, I can't have a second glass of wine?
Well, you can't, if you want a glass of wine, you better order it at 9:55, yes. You can finish it after 10.
Okay.
Commissioner Talasfor.
Yeah, Commissioner Sayak, you better order the bottle. Is that inappropriate? I'm sorry. Okay, I do have a question for the maker of the motion and the seconder, and that is with reference to the letter from Ms. Lynch. And number 6 in her recommendations was to provide a dedicated staff member to residents and owners of the property on Alberta Way for contacting them with issues that arise. Is that something that we could, that somehow should be provided in a condition as far as have a piece of paper or a phone number, or I don't even know. Sometimes, you know, we have new restaurants and bars go out and canvass neighbors after they were there.
Let me see if I can answer your question by saying, if you'd like it to be one of the conditions, we would make that a condition. They can designate, as I understand it, somebody's going to be on duty 24 hours a day.
Right.
You're running a motel. So if you want to make that an explicit condition, I would be glad to adopt that if the
Okay.
seconder would be.
Yes. Could we make that a condition? Thank you, just because I understand.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Discussion is now closed, so therefore I will call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Mr. Paulson, what is the next step?
This is a recommendation to the town council, so we will look for the next available council agenda to put this item on. It will be considered by the council, and they will take final action.
Thank you. We will now take about a 5-minute recess, and then we will be calling agenda item 2. Thank you. We are reopening the Special Planning Commission meeting of May 21st, 2014, and we will now move into the new public hearings portion of our agenda and begin with agenda item 2, which is an appeal of a decision by the Community Development Director denying a tree removal permit on property located at 37 Peralta Avenue, tree removal permit T 14008. By a show of hands, may I see the commissioners who have visited the subject property? Are there any disclosures at this time? Seeing none, Ms. Mosley, you're going to give your report.
I am. Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. On January 14th of 2014, the Parks and Public Works Department received a tree removal permit application to remove a coast live oak with a 36-inch trunk diameter at 37 Peralta. The property owner requested the removal of the oak tree based on the location of the tree in relation to the residence and the impact of it on the roof of the structure. The town's arborist in the Parks and Public Works Department conducted an inspection, and based on the direction of the Planning Commission and the Town Council regarding a similar application at 36 Peralta last year, determined that the application required Planning Commission review, and the permit was denied on March 28th of 2014. The decision was appealed on March 29th of 2014, and the applicant provided a third-party arborist report and a structural report as justification for the removal. These documents were reviewed by the town's consulting arborist, and the following options were recommended. 1, leave the oak tree in place and monitor the tree for removal if and when it causes unacceptable damage, or 2, remove the oak tree now. Staff recommends that the appeal be denied and that there is not sufficient evidence at this time to show that the tree is or has caused actual structural damage. If at a later time the property owner can provide evidence that further damage is being caused to the structure of the residence, the property owner should contact the town so the matter can be revisited by the town arborist. This completes staff's report. We're here if you have any questions.
Commissioner Badami and then Commissioner Erickson.
Can you confirm the applicant has a reduced setback on the side yard where the tree is located of 5 feet?
Yes, the property does have a 5-foot setback rather than the 8-foot that is required by the R18 zone currently.
Thank you.
Commissioner Erickson.
So one of the criteria that we're to evaluate a tree removal permit, if it's in danger of failing or falling, is that it says that it's supposed to be rated on the ISA tree hazard rating form or an equivalent. So the consulting arborist didn't use an ISA tree rating form, but used what she referred to as a condition and preservation suitability rating. So is that an acceptable equivalent?
While the consulting arborist was not available to comment on this question, she's out of the office this week, staff has reviewed the ISA form and compared it to the analysis that the consulting arborist provides, and both staff as well as the town arborist conclude that we feel it meets the requirements of the town code as far as an acceptable alternative.
So when we're deliberating, we can legitimately use that as an equivalent in making the determination.
Correct. That's staff's
Great.
opinion.
Okay. Second question is the construction of the section of the house which is closest. The construction of the house in general, and the construction of the house that's closest to the tree was. Can you confirm that it was done with a building permit issued by the town, with a set of plans that was approved by the town, and that the construction was done consistent with those plans?
Yes, there is a building permit for the approved house that was constructed in 1999, and it does show the residence in the location that it currently exists.
Okay, and the tree was the tree, I believe, was old enough where it was existing at the time. Is that correct?
Correct, it was.
Thank you.
I have a question, Ms. Mosley. In terms of the brickwork that is around the tree, does that require a permit? It might be tile work, but in any case, I think it's stone work.
Generally, as I understand it, no, that would not.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? All right, seeing none, I'll now open the public portion of the public hearing and call Andrew Stearns. Mr. Stearns, you will have 5 minutes to address us. When the light turns yellow, you're down to 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you very much. As an initial matter, I do actually have a tree hazard evaluation form that I'd like to pass out, if I may approach. So that was prepared by our arborist, which is the same arborist report that you have in your packet. What we're looking for today is really just to have the Planning Commission follow the rules that have been established by the town of Los Gatos for removing a tree. So the Stearns want to have the tree removed for purposes of preserving their property and as well as avoiding any personal injury, potentially even death that could result if this tree falls on their house and in their bedroom. So what we're looking at here and what we have is why should the tree be removed? Town Ordinance 2114 is the tree protection ordinance. In it, there are definitions, including in section 2910-0955, where dangerous means a tree which is an imminent hazard or threat to the safety of persons or property as determined by a certified arborist or the deciding body. A certified or consulting arborist is defined as an individual in the profession of arboriculture who, through experience, education, and related training, possesses the competence to provide a tree report, tree survey, or supervise the care and maintenance of the trees, and who is certified by the International Society of Arboriculture, a member of the American Society of Consulting Arborists, or approved by the director. There is nothing in these definitions that requires it be a individual certified by the town of Los Gatos or that be a town arborist. So certainly the arborist selected by the Stearns satisfies this requirement, as does the particular form which I gave you. The issue that was set forth by the Stearns arborist is that there are safety issues with the root anchorage and the fact that the roots may not be going properly out due to the construction, possibly going into the foundation. Town arborists also confirmed this. Further investigation was also said to be, would not be necessary because it would be inconclusive probably to the findings. The Arborist recommends the tree removal in the report that I just gave you, finding that it's dangerous and subject to safety issues. That meets the requirements for meets requirements for removal under the town ordinance. So the only ISA evaluation that you have is the one in front of you that I just gave you. So that meets the requirements. The town arborist preservation suitability does say that it is fair or poor condition, and it also makes a recommendation that it could be removed. Instead of being removed, brings up the argument that unacceptable damage. There's no definition of unacceptable damage, and certainly a question to you is what in your mind becomes unacceptable damage? If a tree is over your house, it's starting to break your tiles and break your roof, do you consider that to be acceptable or unacceptable? Is that something that would put you in concern that the tree may need to be removed? What we have here is a selective enforcement issue as well. The report from the staff indicates that the direction of the Planning Commission and Town Council regarding a similar application at 36 Peralta last year is what's controlling the way this is being handled now. As we all know, that's discrimination. Selective enforcement is not something that is allowed. This is also confirmed in a conversation that Dr. Stearns had with Rob Malden, where he indicated on the telephone that a permit would have been provided if you were on any other street. Process has been created for removing trees. We've met that requirement in all the documents that have been presented. This Planning Commission, the town, has a duty to protect its citizens from these types of situations. The recommendation of the staff is that the town wait until there is structural damage. It's an incredible position to take, since there already is some damage, that we want to wait instead of being proactive and do something that is a realistic and practical approach, instead waiting until somebody's home is actually damaged further by it. One interesting quote from the report of the arborist provided by the town, where she says, "The fact that the tree is still alive and standing is lucky, and I do not advise this type of treatment of trees because it is a bad risk from many perspectives." The infamous words of Dirty Harry, do you feel lucky? We should not be basing a decision on luck and what may happen in the future when we already know the tree is leaning, the tree is in danger of falling. That danger could result in property damage as well as personal injury to the Stearns, any guests they may have, and that is something that should not be sanctioned by the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Stearns. Stay right there because
Yes.
we may have some questions for you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just a factual question, and I'm assuming you may know, since I assume you visit your parents often. When we see the pictures of the tiles on the corner that the tree is actually impacting, I'm assuming that when the house was built, there was some distance between the top of those tiles and the tree. Do you know that personally, or does your father?
Correct, there was distance, because certainly you could not get the tiles in. And so, no, the tree has slowly been leaning, and as you see one of the pictures, I know the ones I submitted were color. I do have color ones here that may help. You can see where they actually have cracked the tiles.
Can you give us any idea of how much movement has been made? In other words, when they put the tile roof in, there was some clearance between the top of the tiles and the tree, but I don't know whether it was 2 inches or 1 inch or 3 feet or what it was.
I do not know what that distance was. Do you have any recollection?
Could you step up to the podium, sir, and just identify yourself for the record?
Yeah, come on up.
Here.
I'm Fellow Stearns, the owner of the house. I do know that there was considerable distance there because it's right by our bedroom, and I could look right up to it. I didn't ever measure it, of course, but I can tell you there was probably, like this. It was a tremendous amount of space. And pardon me for stepping away from the mic.
Would you be, since people are going to be listening to this, would you say that you were talking 2 feet, 3 feet?
Probably somewhere in there, yeah.
Right, thank you.
So, no, don't leave the,
Don't leave the podium. Okay.
So, assuming for the moment it was 2 feet, give or take, how long ago was that the case? In other words, when was the roof installed?
When the permit was done, was it 1998?
99, I believe.
1999.
Okay, so 98, 99. Since
Yeah.
that time, apparently the tree, at least this upper portion of the tree, has moved at least 2 feet.
Well, moved and probably grown considerably too, because at this point, we have a garden and there's probably water hits it, which it didn't have before. It was a vacant lot before.
Okay, I just want to be sure
Yeah.
that it appears that the movement of the tree is at least 2 feet since roughly 1999. You're nodding up and down, but you have to say it.
Oh, yes.
All right, thank you.
Sir, maybe you want to stay at the podium. And so I just have a couple of questions. And my first question would be that did you build this house yourself, sir?
Yes, I did.
All right. And then did you also recently have that patio work done around this tree? Or can you tell me when that patio work might have been done?
Maybe 4 to 5 years after the house was built. Originally, we had gravel in there, and then I changed it. I can't remember when.
All right. The report from the hazard evaluation form says that there is no irrigation. And I know you just commented about the irrigation, so I just want to bring that to your attention.
There isn't any.
There isn't any. So,
There's none.
so when you're talking about a garden, you're saying someplace else brings water to this tree?
Well, every once in a while, the patio gets washed off, or I have some trees in pots that probably a trickle of water gets into them.
All right. And then I just have one third question, and that is a large branch apparently of this tree has already been trimmed, according to Miss Ellis. I just want to make sure I've read this report correctly. Can you talk us through why and how and when that might have been done?
At the time we built the house, there was a large branch that was hanging way over the next door neighbor's house, and that was very dangerous for their house. At that point, no one was living in that house, so we had that removed at that point so we wouldn't fall down and break their house apart.
And
I don't know who the person was who did it.
All right, but all I'm saying is that this wasn't a more recent removal. This
No,
was
no.
some time
Ages ago.
All right, and then the tree balanced itself out apparently.
I guess so.
Okay, well,
Yes.
I was trying to determine if the tipping actually had anything to do with the removal of that limb.
I wouldn't think so. I really don't know.
We're not the experts anyway.
Yeah,
so-
I'm
all
not
right,
either.
right.
If I may add, if you look at the overhead view by the town's arborist, actually the center of the trunk is in the center of the tree.
The center of the trunk is in the center of the tree.
Correct.
Yes,
It's not
yes.
leaning one way or another,
Yes.
showing that there's a broad thing, so it's all leaning together.
Right, all right. Commissioner Bondami?
In preserving a coast oak, why would you put concrete around the perimeter of the base of the tree when it's recommended that you put a wooden deck on piers to preserve the tree?
No one ever recommended that to me.
Okay, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, that answer, okay, Commissioner Talasfor?
You claiming, I mean, in your application to the town, you said that the tree is crushing your roof? Is that correct?
It is. You can see in the pictures.
Well, what I see is that it's perhaps has contact with some of those tiles that are stacked on the roof.
And they are
So-
broken.
And they're broken. So my question to you is that a structural purpose? Are the tiles serving a structural purpose to your roof? Or is it more of a style aesthetic?
Well, the roof is providing shelter. I mean, if the roof tiles crack, you have leaks, then you have water intrusion, then you have mold, and you have a lot of issues.
So then what you're telling me is the tiles are there because they are preventing rain, I mean,
Water intrusion, it's a roof.
okay, but it's 7 tiles on that corner. Now, when I was out there, I didn't see 7 tiles on other corners. Is this just an aesthetic
No,
on
where
that
the-
particular corner?
where the
Can you
corner has
explain why you have 7 tiles? I'm sorry,
It's
what?
It's a leveling effect as you see the roof. And when it comes down from the top, you have the tiles, and eventually it builds up, and so it levels. If you look at all the other corners, and I showed pictures, all the other corners have between 6 and 9, I believe. This one happens to have 7.
Okay, so could you possibly remove some of the tiles? A couple of them? Could you adjust that at
The
all?
rest of the roof, you're just one level. You remove the layer, you're going to be at paper.
If you take one or two tiles off?
Right, it's not, even though it's hitting the corner, eventually it's hitting the rest of the tiles, and you only have a single tile roof. It's not a multi-tile on the roof, it's a single layer over probably 30-pound felt.
Mr. Stearns, if I could just interrupt you for a second, I just want to make sure that the pictures we're looking at, I couldn't tell if they were, they're attached to your letter. Perhaps you could just walk us through them, because I think we can get a better idea of what you're talking about in terms of the stacking and leveling of the roof if we take a look at those, we just walk those pictures together.
Sure, so the first picture, which I have in the order that I gave it to you, if you're looking at the house, and so if you have, looking at the front of the house, the tree is going to be on your right-hand side, and that's going to be the right-hand corner. So this picture is basically going exactly diagonal over the roof to show a stack of how that corner ends. And so that's ending, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tiles on that particular corner.
So Mr. Paulson is helping us set up the screen so that we're all seeing the same thing at one time.
Let's see if I have, I was trying to see if I have the color ones. Yes.
Okay.
All right, so this is basically going exactly diagonal from the roof area where the tree is. And so, same thing where you're stacking up your tile.
Yeah.
Doing,
You want to take the mic with you over there?
what's happening then is, as you can see, the slope of the roof, you're maintaining the aesthetic of having the roof line as it ends. So you're keeping this gap the same throughout. But eventually, the tree is going to go beyond that on the other side, and so you just have the layer of tile here that's going to be crushed. So and these were just to show that all the corners are the same architecturally. So this is moving down then linear from where the tree is, because you can see the tree almost in the background. So this is the other corner, and this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers, it looks like, of tiles to finish that one off. And then here is actually where the tree is touching. So even though you're touching this outside edge of the stacked tiles, you're only probably an inch or so away from hitting the single tile of the actual roof. And those are the three that I had, just to show that it is consistently architecturally in the way it's built.
Thank you. Does that make more sense? Now we understand that. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stearns and Dr. Stearns. You are entitled to an additional 3 minutes. I have no other cards. It's up to you whether or not you wish to remind us of anything we might have forgotten in the last few minutes. Oh, there is a card coming up. Oh, there. So, Mr. Stearns, have a seat. We're going to hear from this speaker, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it was sitting right next to me. I'm Sandy Decker, and I live on Glen Ridge in Los Gatos. I just wanted to congratulate the staff for implementing on this tree removal application the policies that were put in place in a tree removal application that was heard not even quite a year ago. At that time, an arborist as well as a structural consultant were to be required to make future decisions on the health of very large, beautiful heritage oak trees and any damage of any structure in question. In this case, both consultants came to the same decision that this beautiful coastal live oak was healthy and not a threat to this structure. Therefore, I see no reason for you as a commission not to uphold the decision of the planning director to deny this removal permit and keep this beautiful tree alive. if this goes on, we are going to have a certain hearsay about 1 million of these beautiful trees that are about this age, which would be anywhere from 60 to 80 years old. I do appreciate the policies we now have in place, and I hope that we'll be able to uphold them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Decker. Any questions for Ms. Decker? Seeing none, Mr. Stearns, if you'd like to address us again.
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. Just to address those particular issues, talking about a policy of the Planning Commission. We're not here talking about policies of the Planning Commission. We're trying to follow the ordinances that are in place. Those have been approved and gone through the government administrative process in order to be approved. The requirements for taking down this tree have been met through the documentation that we've provided to you. There's no reason to cut out certain trees, certain neighborhoods, certain people, and be given different treatment for a variety of reasons. There's no reason that's acceptable for that, because that is selective enforcement. We're asking you to follow the code, follow the ordinances that have been provided, that are written down. Nothing more than that. They're not asking to be treated separately or specially or been given any kind of favoritism. But what we've got now is a situation was that because they live on a particular tree and there was a particular issue that took place in the last year, you now have these new policies, unpublished policies. I mean, you're coming into Brown Act violations if you have unpublished policies. We don't want to go there either. So we ask that you just merely follow what the ordinance says. You look at the documentation that's provided. We have 2 arborists that recommend that the tree should come down, a structural engineer that recommends that the tree should come down. The only alternative is that it's recommended we should wait until there's more structural damage. If it were your house, how much structural damage would you take before you think that tree needs to come down? Pieces of the roof falling, pieces of the wall falling. What about water intrusion? What about mold? What about sheetrock? What about foundation damage? That's also brought up in the reports. What is unacceptable to you, and do you want to be the one who is basing your fate on luck, as was described by the town arborist? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. I do have a question for you, so stay right there at the podium. In the tree hazard evaluation form that you provided to us, it does say that the pavement has lifted, and yet that wasn't part of your presentation, and so I need to understand that.
No, that was not part of my presentation, so I was not focused on that, so I don't know the exact extent of that. It is a concrete, you had mentioned tile, stone. It's not. It's actually a concrete, a stamped concrete patio, but I don't know exactly how much it is lifted.
All right. Any other questions? Commissioner Sayak.
Thank you, Mr. Stearns. 2 questions for you. The first, with regard to in the staff report on page 3, it says the consulting arborist also recommended the property owner remove some of the excess tiles to show the actual contact with the roof itself. At the time of this report, the applicant has not has not done so. Is there a reason why you and your clients have chosen not to remove the tiles to see how much damage is underneath it?
Certainly, because you don't want to be starting to remove pieces of the roof. You're always going to have problems. Yes, you could crack out the piece of the roof that is cracked, or the tile that is cracked, is pressed between what exists right now and the tree. You're going to have to force that piece out, which means you could possibly break any other tiles. You never want to do that, especially when you're dealing with a Spanish tile roof. Anytime you're removing tiles or causing any kind of crack or fissure, you're going to weaken it. So certainly to do that would be an extremely difficult process, and it maybe make it worse.
And my second question, you've commented twice now about selective enforcement, and I guess I don't understand what, in your opinion, why there's selective enforcement and that there's no consistency. As you did mention that there was an application that came before us and we did decide a certain way, and so following that logic, wouldn't one argue that we, depending on how this body decides again tonight, that there is a consistency there?
No, when the underlying Public Works Department is supposed to make a decision, evaluate the facts that are presented to them and whether or not the tree can come out. It's our understanding, and it's put in here in the background as well, that the denial was based on the direction of the Planning Commission and the Town Council regarding a similar application at 36 Peralta Avenue last year. So that's why the denial, not based on the facts, not based on whether or not this tree in its individual capacity with the particular facts should come out, but because of that. And then we had the phone call between Dr. Stearns and Mr. Molden afterwards where he said if you were on another street, you would have been approved. But they're afraid of the consequences from 36 Peralta. That's selective enforcement. You're welcome.
Commissioner Erickson?
So let me return to what you were doing in the first part of your presentation for a moment about the tiles, and then a comment which Commissioner Sayoc said, and let me read you a sentence from the staff report. The consulting arborist also recommended the property owner remove some of the excess, and I'm emphasizing that word for a reason, tiles adjacent to the tree trunk to better show the actual contact with the roof itself. So if I followed your earlier presentation when you had that up, there aren't any excess tiles on this corner that weren't consistent with the functional and architectural design that was used to build the roof. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Badami?
In reviewing your new construction application in 1998, it included a letter stating that you had to increase the square footage of the home to maintain the beautiful trees that are in existence on the property, and that your hope was to keep the trees as the paramount strength of the property even after the house was built. What preservation methods have been done to hold true to that?
Other than just continual maintenance of the trees, I mean, trying to keep them cleared of dead debris. I mean, that's about all you can do. It's an oak tree. So they did what they thought they could do. But as far, I mean, the intent was certainly to preserve the tree. But once it starts leaning into your house, like I said, you've got about a 2-foot movement, you start to get different concerns. Our plans today are great, but this is exactly the problem. We're trying to be proactive to make sure nothing further happens. And we've got a situation where the recommendation of the staff here is to be reactive. Let's wait until you've got a lot of structural damage. Let's wait until that ultimate act may occur before you come back to us, and then we'll see what we can do for picking up the pieces.
Can you tell me about your tree application permit February 10th of '01? I believe there was a tree application permit on file? No? It would be T-02-0023. It's about another tree on the property that was removed, so I just had a question about that.
There we go.
I'm concerned about the preservation methods of trees on the property.
Yeah, understand.
I had a redwood tree that was about 3 feet from a deodora tree on the back alley, and it was lifting up the corner of my garage, and that was that redwood tree was removed.
Okay, could that be the redwood tree from July 7th of 2010? Was that the one that was ruining the garage doors and the garage floors?
That sounds like 36.
No. It would be tree permit number T-10-056.
The only tree permit I've ever had was the one for that redwood tree, and that's probably closer to your first date, because it's been quite a while ago.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. We'll let the applicant take a look at it. I mean, it's
Okay. I also
13
found
years old.
Okay. I also found another tree permit application for a chestnut tree. That would be application number T-02-0024. Does that ring a bell?
Never had a chestnut tree on the. State your name.
Ollie Stearns, and I know our next door neighbors asked that it be removed because the chestnut trees is almost like a poisonous thing or something with them. And
Mrs. Stearns, I just want you to know that, first of all, pull the microphone down so we can hear you, and then before you leave tonight, both you and Dr. Stearns will fill out a card.
But they asked, there's like a poisonous thing with the chestnut trees, and it was bothering them. So that's why that tree wasn't our choice. We liked it, but.
So it was removed to accommodate a neighbor, is what
Exactly.
you're saying. Thank you.
Actually, I saw that it was denied, the chestnut tree. So this would be your fourth tree permit application here tonight, then?
Could be, if you've got all those, it could be.
Okay. I'm just trying to reconcile the letter that you wrote that said that your hope was to keep the trees as the paramount strength of the property, even after the house was built.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Stearns, thank you very much for your detailed presentation tonight. And I'm going to close the public portion of the public hearing. And now I will invite comments from commissioners. Anyone want to make a motion or have additional questions of staff? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I just want to make a couple of comments, not a motion. I found the expert reports rather interesting because when you look at what the town's expert said, in my opinion, whether or not to remove this oak is debatable, which is not exactly a particularly helpful argument. On the other hand, the urban tree specialist, West Valley arborist, concludes by saying that they feel that regrettably this oak is a candidate for removal pending the permit process, as no mitigation of the situation would be sufficient to correct it. And the Adamo and Associates Structural Engineers, in the other report we have, says the tree branches are one-sided and is leaning over the top of this portion of the house, and he concludes that the tree will be best interest of preserving the structural integrity of your house. So the two experts for the applicant recommend removal. The town expert says that's debatable. I found that uniquely unhelpful. So I just wanted to say that the record is kind of not as clear as I'd like it to be. So,
Commissioner O'Donnell, I'll just follow up on what you're saying because my thoughts went to page 4 of the arborist report, the final paragraph, when Ms. Ellis says, this oak must have endured significant root loss due to this construction, but she had no knowledge of the exact extent. Sometimes it takes a while, years or decades, for a tree to fall over. But this oak has managed to survive. There's no guarantee that the tree may not decline and or fail in the future due to the construction root damage. But at this time, the canopy appears healthy. So you mentioned some language. I'm just saying that there is additional, I think, ambiguous language in the report. So it certainly is not a definite from Ms. Ellis. So Commissioner Erickson.
So I would point out to my fellow commissioners that I think we established with the staff that the condition preservation suitability rating was a reasonable thing. If my understanding is correctly, there are 6 categories of ratings that are possible if you read the text carefully, because the text suggests to you that fair to poor and fair to good are intervening rating categories. So there are 6. So by rating it fair to poor, it is the next to the bottom. So if it was totally unsuitable, it would be rated poor. Fair to poor is the next worst condition, or the least suitability to be removed. So it seems to me, while there wasn't, I'm sympathetic to Commissioner O'Donnell and Commissioner Smith's concern about the absence of definity. What was said in the report is that it's likely to occur. I mean, I would conclude that the report tells us that it isn't suitable. It's close to being not suitable to preserve from the information that's there, and that there's reasonable reasonable cause to think that it will, in fact, at some point in time fail from what's in the report, even though it wasn't a definitive recommendation. So, and although we've heard in the testimony the use of the word lucky and all those kind of things that are in the report, so it seems to me that it is inevitable that this tree will be, at some point in time, moved down in categories to being fully unsuitable to preserve. And we're close to that category now. So at the point in time that we get to that place, the owner of the property, under the ordinances of the town, will be required to replace the tree, consistent with how the arborist does. The sooner we do that, when they replace that tree, the older that tree will be as we move forward in history. So I don't see any reason to not move forward at this point in time to give the new tree as long a period of time to add to the tree, the town forestry and canopy cover, and to be a full participant in that for many more years, as opposed to restricting the number of years that tree the replacement tree or trees could contribute to the town's forest.
Commissioner Erickson, was that the making of a motion?
It's an observation to my fellow commissioners.
So no motion from you yet.
I haven't had good luck with motions tonight.
Commissioner Talasfor.
Hi. In discussion with that point about the observations of the tree data that's provided to us in Deborah Ellis's summary, under the condition, the vigor of that tree is near perfect. And that to me really stood out. Although the preservation suitability says fair or poor, that actually, it translates to an intermediate rating. So it's not failing to me. And when you combine the two, that tells me a lot about this tree. It also tells me that the tree is growing, but I'm just wondering if there needs to be a little more adjustment to that roof. I mean, I understand the idea of the tiles now, but I don't see any compelling evidence in any of the reports that this tree is crushing a roof or the roots are causing cracks to the foundation or the walls, and I don't see anything about water intrusion. So I'm having a hard time with the compelling evidence, and I'm feeling like it might be far greater damage to the ambiance of the neighborhood and the town to remove it at this point. Now, when you live in a neighborhood with trees, that's a risk, as we know, and I've had many risks like that. But when you take care of them, it seems like, we want to hold on to them because they are so significant to this town, and especially that tree to your house. I was really taken by what I saw and how it really enhanced what it was like. So for me, I would encourage maybe more looking at what could be done with those tiles or how else to support it. So that's where I am right now.
Commissioners, I am hoping to see a motion along the way so that we can then have this discussion after the motion. Commissioner O'Donnell, are you answering the call for action?
That tree has moved more than 2 feet since 1999. I will tell you right away, if that were my house and a tree had moved that far in, and that roof structure is a structure. It isn't 7 tiles sitting there. So we've got a tree that within 14 years or something like that, it was 1999, I think it was, the movement started. has moved over 2 feet, has crushed the top tile of 7, which would require a fair share of weight, I would think. There's no reason to believe that it is not going to continue to move, in which case, I don't know what we have to do. Do we have to wait until it collapses onto the roof and say, come on in, we'll, grant that. The record, as near as I can tell, is 2 experts that say it should be removed. Our expert says it's debatable. The facts are that it's moved 2 feet in 14 years. So I think that's the record. Now, if maybe I'm missing something there. I mean, I went out and looked at the tree, and it's a beautiful tree from when you step back and look at it, and I agree with that. The problem, the mistake here is I don't know why the house was allowed to be built so close to that tree, but it was, and the permit was granted, and I don't think we should say, well, it's your fault, and therefore we're going to let it fall on your house. So I throw that out to find out where we're going.
Commissioner Sayoc and then Commissioner Birch.
Well, I'm not ready to make a motion. I think, as Commissioner O'Donnell said, it's debatable. And I'm looking at page 2 of Ms. Ellis's report. Based upon my evaluation of the tree from the ground, I cannot find a compelling reason to remove the tree. Now, I understand all the concerns, I understand the evidence provided, but I'm also looking at the fact that it's a significant tree. It's a coast live oak with a 36-inch diameter, and because we have an expert, whether or not her verbiage was appropriate, but she says that she does not find a compelling reason to remove the tree. I'm of the mindset that let's give it some time, that perhaps it isn't crushing the structure as this expert says. It's her opinion that the trunk of this is contacting tiles on the roof, but not the structure itself. How much time, how much significant damage is recalled? I mean, that's where I'm struggling right now, because I don't know what those parameters are. But given the fact that it's such a significant tree, and we state the values that we place on these trees, I'm inclined to follow staff recommendation of a denial of the appeal.
Commissioner Birch.
Adding on to a bit to what Commissioner O'Donnell had to say, in reading through these reports, I guess I'm going to use a word I used earlier, I feel a little frustrated because I feel like we're being backed into a corner here based on a series of bad decisions. Obviously, it was never a good idea to build a home in the drip line of such a significant tree. I'm confident that destroyed part of the root system. And then the decision to place a concrete patio around it furthered the damage, which I believe is causing damage to the root structure, which is causing it to lean. How far it's going to lean, we don't know. But I certainly feel backed in the corner now. And I would have probably felt a little bit better about potentially approving it if I had seen something in here from a roofing company to really feel that all avenues had been explored. I then could have seen that, yes, there's been all these options. Placing a new roof is not advisable. And we could then move forward feeling very confident that every avenue had been explored. But at this point, I don't feel that way. I feel like only one option has been presented, and we are now backed into the corner of making a decision based on that.
Commissioner Bandami.
I actually did call a roofing company, and there are mitigation measures available. And coincidentally, Saturday, when I went out to do my inspection, I live on the other side of...
I agree with you, Commissioner Bandami, to bring outside knowledge in to all of the commissioners needed to be privy to that. And so there is a point of order with the information you're about to give us.
Okay. My apologies. I was not going to expand on that. I was going to talk about mitigation measures and...
Could we have the... I want to be clarified too, because I'm not sure, but I'd like the town attorney to kind of tell us... I'm troubled by this, but I couldn't give you advice on it, and I can learn from this. So if you would tell us, you're testifying as to your private phone calls And I'm just wondering if that's proper.
So under your rules, which we would have gone over later on, is actually during your ex-parte communications, which we'll go over in the near future, that is the time when you should discuss your ex-parte communications and what you've learned outside of the meeting, either through other conversations with other, obviously you're not allowed to talk to opponents, proponents, or interested parties, but if you've done any of your own research on it, that's the time you're supposed to, if it's actually influencing your decision. If it doesn't influence your decision whatsoever, then you aren't supposed to. But that's specifically addressed in 4.3 and do your ex-parte communications, and that's the time when it's supposed to be done.
Okay. What I was leading up to was, as I walked home Saturday after making my inspection, I happened to walk through the Los Gatos Lodge as it's on my way home. And I happened to glance up at the roof, and there was a beautiful tree that apparently had grown up along the side of the Los Gatos Lodge. And so for mitigation measures, the lodge did cut around the side of the roof to accommodate the growth of the tree. And I just wonder if there's some mitigation measures available with the roof that could be done to prevent the contact and impact.
And after Commissioner Erickson, then I'm going to also make some comments. Go ahead, Commissioner Erickson.
Yes, I would ask the town attorney, can he help me understand the relevance of what the Los Gatos Lodge did with the tree that was on their property to what's under consideration here?
That's up to each individual planning commission to determine what relevance that is and determine what weight it wants to give it.
All right, so I'm going to make my comments, and they are that we do have not just policy, but we have a moral commitment actually to the Coast Live Oak. And I say that we, meaning a collective we, it's not just the commissioners, but in the town we've all stated our belief that having the urban forest is one of the things that sets us apart as a wonderful community. So having said that, and expressing, and I do want to express my extraordinary respect for these trees, I also took a look at this damage, and this is, for me, this is not a case where we can take a leaning branch and lift it through pulleys, etc., up off of a roof and buy ourselves another 20 years. This is the trunk of a tree that is intruding on a home. I do think that by denying this application, what we are doing is punishing a homeowner for plans that were approved through the proper process many years ago. So we can all agree that the home shouldn't have been built that close to the tree, but it is, and they were properly permitted to build the home in its location. In terms of just taking a few tiles off of a roof, I do think that it sounds simple to do, but there is masonry. I mean, the tiles aren't just laying there; they are connected with cement, for lack of a better word. So this isn't just taking a tile off and then waiting for the tree to then just lean in. So my sense is that these homeowners, while it is very sad to see personally and as part of the community another tree go down, that this is a situation that I do think for the future safety of the home and the homeowners that we should be granting this application. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Why did I make a motion? Sounds awfully close to me, but we'll find out how close it is. So the appeal, which is before us, is recommended for denial by the staff. I'm going to move that we grant the permit for the following reasons. We have two experts' opinion which are clear. We have one expert's opinion which is, believe me, in my judgment, not clear. When she says it's debatable and then reaches a conclusion, I have to put the two together. And then we have a fact which is uncontroverted or incontroverted, that there's been 2 feet of movement of the trunk of this tree, And we have testimony that the built-up roof on the corners bears a structural purpose, and therefore this is cracking a part of the structure of the roof. And I agree, it's a beautiful tree. When I looked at that tree, I would love to save that tree. On the other hand, I don't want to wake up some morning and find out that that tree has done more damage, potentially, to people who are on the second floor of that house. So I would move that we grant the tree removal permit subject to the required canopy replacement. And I think that's I think that's all I need to do. I don't think I need any other findings. Although we have, let me take a look here. There's apparently, there are findings on Exhibit 2, and I would incorporate those by reference, which is also, for example, that the granting of the permit is categorically exempt and the other matters set forth in Exhibit 2.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second? Commissioner Erickson?
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been made and seconded. Do we have further discussion on the matter? Seeing none, all in favor? 3. And against? 4. The motion has been denied, and
Let me ask the chair a question. That's been denied. There are two possibilities, obviously. One is to sustain the denial. The other possibility is to continue it. I've heard some questions, such as if we'd had some testimony, i.e. Written opinion, from an expert. We've also heard that, is there some other way to solve the roof? So it is quite possible, I don't know whether the applicant wants to do this, whether we give him a chance to seek such opinions, because this is really close, it's 3 or 4, as opposed to, I don't know if there's another appeal. I think this is the end of the appeal line. So that's a suggestion, and the chair, I make that suggestion to the chair.
Mr. Paulson, is there an appeal of this decision?
If the commission makes a decision, which happens to be denial or approval, that decision is appealable to the town council.
So if I could hear comments from about Commissioner O'Donnell's suggestion that the homeowner be directed to provide additional evidence at a continued hearing. Do I have any commissioner comments on that? Commissioner Talasfor?
Right. I don't know that I have a comment on that. I don't know that it would change my mind at this time. I've lived in the town a long time, and I've lived under oak trees a long time under lots of different conditions. And I've always, I think a conservative, there's a chance here that I'm taking the conservative route on this, and I'm taking the wait and see. I don't see, because I had no evidence of crushing roof. It's like what that was said in I think your application, destroying the house. I mean, I guess it's destroying a tile in the house. So I really was taking a really wait and see attitude, and I think that I do believe, because I've seen so many things with different kinds of construction and mitigation measures, that this roof tile could be, the situation could be mitigated above ground. So that's why I voted against it.
Any other comments? Seeing none, then the vote will stand. And yes, there will be, we do need a motion to deny the application then, commissioners. Commissioner Birch?
Okay. I guess I'll make a motion to deny the conditional, oh gosh, I'm looking at the wrong thing, so sorry. To deny application T14-0008 for a tree removal permit at 37 Peralta Avenue.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Talasfor?
In that motion.
All in favor? And opposed? 4-4, 3 against. Mr. Paulson, what are the appeal rights?
There are appeal rights. Anyone that's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision. The forms are available in the town clerk's office. There is a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. I am going to make a comment, and then I'm going to call agenda item 3. We were going to have a study session at the end of this evening on our town attorney was going to lead us in a discussion of fair practices, Brown Act, etc. And we are going to delay that particular hearing until another time. So now I'm going to call agenda item 3, which is a request to modify an existing conditional use permit for Fusion Academy at 50 University Avenue, Suite 300. Are there any disclosures by commissioners at this time? Commissioner O'Donnell?
I will have to recuse myself as my property line is within 500 feet of this property.
Commissioner Sayak?
I too will have to recuse myself because I am within 500 feet as well.
And I will have to recuse myself because I also live within 500 feet of the property. So the Commission's very capable Vice Chair Birch will conduct the remainder of the meeting this evening. Thank you. And we're going to leave the room.
I would like to thank you for your patience. This has been a long one tonight. All right. We are looking at item number 3, 50 University Avenue, Suite 300. By a show of hands, may I see the commissioners who have visited the property? Thank you. Are there, obviously we know the disclosures. Ms. Mosley, would you give us the report?
Yes, thank you. The tenant space is located on the second floor of the former Border Book space in the Old Town Shopping Center. In September of 2012, the Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit for Fusion School to operate a year-round junior and senior high school with one-on-one instruction. The school operates with a tutoring format in small individual rooms with larger open rooms for studying and individual work. The Planning Commission recently held a required one-year review of the CUP to ensure compliance with the existing requirements and that there were no additional impacts associated with the use. No issues were raised prior to or during this public hearing, nor has staff received any complaints since that meeting. The applicant is interested in modifying several conditions within their CUP to better accommodate the use now that it is more established in the community and additional capacity is required. The applicant is requesting to increase the permitted student allowance from 40 students to 63 and to decrease the staff from 32 to 29. In addition, the applicant is requesting to remove the restriction regarding the number of non-teaching events on site with the continued restriction that the events not exceed the permitted hours of operation or the maximum allowable students and staff or adults at any time. The proposed use would continue to comply with town parking requirements and would have a cumulative peak hour increase for traffic of 10 trips, which requires a community benefit offering. The applicant has offered a donation of $5,000 towards improvements that are underway at the Oak Meadow Park Bandstand. The proposed application complies with town code and general plan, and the applicant has shown the ability to adequately inform and regulate parking and pick up drop-off traffic to the extent that no concerns have been voiced by neighbors or other businesses during either public hearing process. Staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the application subject to the attached conditions. This completes staff's report. We are here if you have any questions.
Commissioner Talasfore?
Thank you. I do have a question, and it's about complaints. And I wanted to know, how would the town actually garner any complaints about this school and its parking and traffic issues, if there were any?
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, Gardner, as
Well,
far as how would we receive those complaints?
Yes,
or
how do you receive them? How do you tell people? Is there a report that shows, I mean, I don't, how do you do that?
So this, the school has gone through a public hearing process. This is the third time that we've noticed neighbors for the process. The last one was in February, to, again, like I specified, to revisit and see if there were any concerns that were raised by neighbors or businesses in that center or in that vicinity. They would have been able to write. We do have the online code compliance form for them to submit any complaints or concerns. Our numbers are available on town website, but beyond that, I'm not sure that.
So it would be hard to identify any parking issues related to this business, I would think.
Other than just general feedback that staff, me personally, has received from members of the community in that immediate area, that they don't even notice that Fusion is there. But again, that's me talking with other with other members of the community, so it wasn't relevant to the staff report. But I personally have heard from members of that vicinity that are surprised at how well it functions and flows.
Okay, and this is at 40 students, correct?
At the current rate, yes.
And then one other question, what's the parking ratio for Old Town stores?
It depends on the use, but retail is 1 for every 300 gross square feet. Office is 1 for every 250 gross square feet. Restaurant is based on seating, depending on whether they have a separate bar or not.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Erickson.
Thank you, Vice Chair Birch. So, Miss Mosley, despite what your name tag says, so the town would have noticed the landlord and all of the other tenants in that, with respect to this, before this public hearing. Is that correct?
Correct. Before all public hearings, we notice within 300 feet of all addresses, property owners, and tenants.
And you've not, from that notification from any of the other tenants in this shopping center, you've not received any feedback or concerns from them, nor from any of the neighbors in that radius?
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Talsvar.
One other question. I'm referring to the analysis in the staff report on page 3 under number of student and staff. It says gross leasable area includes interior common areas associated with the entire center, which consists of electrical rooms, hallways, elevator, and stairs, and that the tenant space consists of 7,419 square feet, and the gross leasable area associated with this tenant is calculated for parking at 9,612 square feet, which includes those elevators, stairs, hallways, and electrical rooms. But that's not usable, is that correct?
It includes
By a school?
It includes their portion of it, as well as the lobby that was created on the ground floor was specifically for this tenant. It does not access any other space.
Okay, all right. So the lobby would be usable by the tenant?
It is part of their leasable square footage, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. At this point, we will open the public portion of the hearing and give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission. I believe Dan Colella, is that the? And we're going to ask when you finish that you fill out one of the speaker cards for us and give it to the staff.
Sure.
So you have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to ask that you state your name and your address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Dan Colella. I'm with Fusion. My address is 174 Crescent Drive, Grand Haven, Michigan. Thank you for holding a special meeting this evening. You've definitely had a stressful one, so we appreciate you hanging in there with us. I'll be brief. I shouldn't need 5 minutes. I think staff has presented our request to amend the CUP accurately. We are seeking an increase in the number of students with a slight decrease in teachers, as well as a removal of any restrictions on what were referred to in the report as special events. Just a little bit about the school, if you aren't familiar with Fusion at this point. I think I've been before you before. Fusion is a one-to-one student-teacher ratio that provides classes for a variety of different types of students. We currently have about 20 schools throughout the country. And in the case of our facility here in Los Gatos, we're currently looking at a waiting list. So we're excited to invite more students to join the school. As staff has indicated, we have had a great deal of support here within the community, both from parents as well as business owners. I think we have in our file at some point letters from various families, supporting the work we do here, and we look forward to continuing, to provide those services. At this point, I think that, I'd like to be as brief as possible. I know you've been here, for quite a while. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kalila. Commissioner Erickson.
So this is, I just want to be sure that we're being sure the parking is correct. So you're increasing the number of students by approximately 50%. I'm rounding the percentages, and reducing the staff by 10%. So, if my math is roughly correct, so I would applaud you. So, I want to be sure that's correct, right?
That's
because it drives the
well,
number of
percentage-wise,
you're going from 40 to 63 and from 32 to 29.
Correct.
Right. So you're increasing the number of students, served pretty significantly, reducing the amount of staff. So, is that literally, and you're not doing that without expanding the hours, or?
No, there would be no changes to hours or the curriculum.
So probably those of us who are taxpayers in the Los Gatos Joint Union School District and Union School District would want you to consult with our school district about how you serve greater numbers of students with fewer staff, but I'll let you take that up directly with them. But I just want to be, I guess, were you underutilized? No, so you had an allowed capacity of staff. Were you using the full staff that you had the allowed capacity for?
I think in the original CUP application that was submitted, I think there was, and I wasn't part of that, but I think the initial numbers were, for lack of a better word, exploratory. We were definitely underutilizing the amount of parking that was available to us by our landlord. And so what we looked at was, from an initial 12-month period, we went forth with 40 students and the 32 staff members to see how well that would be managed, how well we would be received in the community, and then assess going forward what kind of modifications we might be able to make to that mix.
Sure. And the reason for my question is the numbers come out so precisely to the parking requirements being exactly the same that I just wanted to be sure that it wasn't a hypothetical that was done to cause the parking requirement not to change. I'm not saying that it was,
right,
but I'm just so I was trying to be sure that I understood the possibility you were underutilizing the staff capacity or some other explanation for how you could serve 50% more students with fewer staff without expanding the hours.
I think that I'd like to have staff address this.
Well, I just have a little background that might help you understand the difference between what you're seeing. When the application came before us in 2012, the application was actually for 30 staff members and 40 students. That was what they, were anticipating, wanting to start with. Staff, when we did the parking analysis and we discovered the gross leasable square footage, in order to continue to make sure that the parking associated with this tenant suite the CUP complied with that and held all those parking spaces, so that a future office tenant that came in wouldn't be deficient on parking if that parking were somehow taken up 10 years from now by somebody else. So staff increased that 30 to 32 in order to continue to make it so that it required 38 parking spaces. They didn't ask for 32 staff members at the beginning, so the 29 is just one shy of what they were originally asking for. Yes, they reduced, they basically took down or reduced one staff member from what they originally anticipated needing, and then added as many students as the parking ratio for town code would allow. So you are seeing that they were doing the math to get exactly what the existing parking associated with that tenant suite would allow per town code, with that slight reduction in staff.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Erickson?
Was that above and beyond what, or not even what?
Yeah, it's fine. Well, yeah, I mean, presumably what the CUP is doing is setting upper boundaries for each of those. If I'm rephrasing what the staff just said, they're setting upper boundaries. They may or may not use those upper boundaries.
Thank you.
Commissioner Telesfor?
I have about, I hate to say it, 5 questions, but they're quick. Okay. Why don't I ask them to you quickly, and then we'll just see. So how many of these of your students are Los Gatos students, would you say? I mean, I don't mean numbers, but is it a majority? Is it a few?
Percentage of enrollment that are actual residents?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but let me defer to our head of school. Would you like me to come up?
You need to come up to the podium, and you'll
And-
also need to fill out a speaker card, please.
And clarify for me, at this time, you are operating with 6th through 12th grade? Okay.
Danny Rickman, I'm the head of school for Fusion Academy. I don't have an exact number for you as far
I
as
don't care for an exact,
Los
just
Gatos
give me-
residents.
yeah.
I would say probably around 40% of our students are Los
Okay.
Gatos residents.
And how do your students get to school mostly? Is it bike, car, bus, walk?
For our Los Gatos residents, a number of our students do bike or walk. But for the students who are coming from out of town, from San Jose and surrounding areas,
The
most of them are
60%.
dropped.
That would be 60%?
Mm-hmm. They're dropped off by their parents. There's a very, very small percentage of our students that drive themselves and park.
Okay. And have you, it sounds like you may have encouraged some carpooling?
Yes.
Okay. Then the other thing I wanted to know, though, was you want the 23 students. What period of time are you thinking about enrolling them? This year, next year? And what is your growth prediction for the years to come?
Sure. We don't look to be going beyond what we're requesting now as far as growth for the students. That's about
The student number, you mean?
student number, yes, correct, thank you. That's standard for most Fusion campuses, so that's where we would like to stay. Currently, we have a wait list of families that would, starting for the fall, put us at that number if we were able to accept them. That's given we'd be able to hire to be able to meet those needs as well.
That's the 62, the 23 number?
Yes, correct, which would put us at 63, correct.
Okay. And then you also asked, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go right ahead here. You also asked for extra events. You wanted to have the 2 events a year or a month removed from the conditions that we gave you last time you were here in front of us. You wanted to have that removed entirely. Now, can you tell me why and what you plan on doing, and what will I be seeing?
Sure. So none of our events are that we're talking about on this monthly basis are large events. There's outreach events where we would have anywhere from 1 family to, at the most, 10 families coming to see the school for like an open house, for example, to get to know the program. Those we actually have set for the next 6 months, and there are, for outreach events, there are 2 per month. And so the request is to be able to allow us also then to have student events on campus and parent events, which are also small.
Small meaning what?
I've never.
I would like a number on this.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead, sorry.
Typically, if we have a student fun night, for example, where students come, it's about 15 students that maybe come on campus for a social event.
And by themselves, so no family, like brothers, sisters, siblings, friends?
No. The only time that we would have an event where there would be parents involved would be like a parent ambassador meeting of that sort, but typically it's not students and parents on campus at the same time. It would be a social event for students or a parent ambassador meeting that would be maybe 10 parents that are representing our parent population.
So you didn't have that this year. How did you manage having any of these other events with the students, or did you?
We had some parent ambassador meetings at the restaurants surrounding our school, which met the need for then, but it would be nice to be able to have that on our campus. And then for students, we've done a number of field trips off campus to try to meet the social needs of our students. But yeah.
So would you be willing to let us limit the number of attendees at these extra functions?
Excuse me.
I mean, it sounds very, I don't really know.
Sure.
I mean,
I
I
think
can't get my
actually-
arms around what
Sure.
what this is about.
I understand. I think actually it is limited in the staff's report to not to exceed the typical number of occupants at the school at any one time. So.
You mean in the rooms?
In the facility.
In the facility?
Right. So at the school, there's a limit to the total number of occupants at any one time. And actually, I think it's 92, right? It's what we're proposing in terms of 29 staff and 63 students. So at any one time, there wouldn't be any more than that, is I think currently how the report's written.
Okay, and so then just one last question, it has to do with parking. So given your commitment to the number of people then that would be working within the school, how many spaces would you need beyond what you currently have? Parking spaces.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Maybe that's a question of staff. I don't know.
Well, the parking requirement per town code for the use is still 38 parking spaces.
So
How
they
they
can't go
handle
over that.
and accommodate that, whether it be drop off and such. There is no assigned parking spaces
Right, so-
permitted there at Old Town.
Can't monitor it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, I had just a couple following up. As you know, the CUP runs with the land, and so typically we get pretty detailed in our decision-making with that. And one of my questions also related back to the events. I would feel more comfortable with that if we could come upon an agreeable number per month. As you know, that area can get pretty busy, and perhaps the days of the week that those are going to happen. You had a social event on a Saturday, we could be looking at a lot of traffic issues in that area. So I was wondering if we could have a little bit of dialogue on how often per month, the typical nights of the week that we could work towards.
I don't think that we were talking about weekend events. It would be during the business week. Typically, our classes are held Monday through Thursday, and then Friday is when we're typically doing things that are more off-campus, field trips, things like that. For me, it would seem just during the school week, unless there's recommendation for a specific day during that week.
No, I was trying to
Yeah,
stay clear
if
of
it could
Friday,
be-
Saturday,
yeah.
Sunday.
Okay, so Monday through Friday, I think sounds like it would work. It could work.
Monday through Thursday? Do you do a lot of Friday night events?
Not typically.
You know how
I-
busy that area gets. So
Yeah.
I would try to keep it at a time, the days of the week
Sure.
where we wouldn't be looking at just mass chaos, especially since you're going to have children around there with the traffic that goes on the weekends for safety reasons. Is that something you could be agreeable to?
We could agree to Monday to Thursday.
Thank you. At that point, how many days per week do you see you having these events? Is it twice? Is it every day?
No. Every day per week, you mean?
Yeah. How many times per week do you think these events will be going on?
Well, it's currently twice a month, and if we really have to limit it, I can't imagine them having one every day. I mean, one would be time to teach. So, I mean, if we could maybe propose once a week, one event a week, over the course of a 12-month period, 52.
I would look to my fellow commissioners. Does that feel?
I would be agreeable to that.
Okay.
I guess I would want to be, if we're talking about, are we talking about literally one per week? So we would preclude them from having a student, to having two, is our intent to preclude them from having 2 events in a week, even though they might only have 2 in a month?
No, I was going to do it with a monthly. You know,
Okay.
so if you say once a week, then that's 4 in a month.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to be sure we were not.
Commissioner Talasore.
Yeah, a follow-up question to, I think I heard you say, and I've forgotten your name?
Danny.
Danny, thank you.
Danny and Dan, it'll be very difficult.
There you go.
remember.
Dan and Danny.
Dan.
Oh, I see. You can only work here if your name is Dan. All right. The Dan Show. So anyway, the question I have, and I think, Danny, you had said that you don't plan on expanding further than 23 in future years. Did I hear that right?
Correct.
Okay. So how would you feel if that was conditioned?
So let me try to explain a little bit about how we grow Fusion. And so, you know, we don't believe in a big school, obviously, and we're not looking for additional square footage or to expand or do any kind of an addition to the school. You can condition it if you're comfortable with that. I would just say to you, when we get to a certain size, we start looking for another location nearby if the market will continue to support it. So, I mean, our model from a real estate investment and growth and development perspective is very similar to how you see retailers look at spaces. And so if there's a Best Buy in the neighborhood and the demand is that high, there might be another Best Buy down the road, you know, that will get built at another time. That's our approach.
So shall I interpret this as meaning that it would not bother you to have that condition because the success that you're experiencing might very well lead you to finding another place in town, which would be fabulous. So I would think that you. So
I think it's probably okay. Because the other part of it is we're not getting any additional parking spaces, and I mean I understand that as the driver. Unless we leased more space within the center, then we would be eligible for more parking. And I honestly, I would come back and ask, because we have more square footage and we have more parking, if you would consider allowing us to expand. But for where we're at today, in this size space with the parking that we have, we're absolutely fine with that condition.
Okay, thank you, because this is a retail center, so basically.
Right.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we normally invite comments from the public, but seeing none, you are always given an additional 3 minutes if there was anything additional you wanted to add. Okay. All right. Thank you. And I'll go through my notes here.
Vice Chair, before I have a question for us, and we may want to be sure to clarify with them.
Okay.
In the conditions of approval, the non-teaching events don't include, as an example, what they refer to as student fun nights. So do we want to expand, would we want to expand the language of that to be sure that we're restricting the kind of events appropriately? So the definition in condition number 6, non-teaching events, it says such as school tours, parent nights, art shows, and student-teacher training. So none of those, I mean, I suppose an art show could be a student fun night. Depends on, but I mean, they were, so I guess I would wonder, or I guess my question would have been for them, are they comfortable with that, or would they see the definition of non-teaching events being expanded to include what they're intending to do.
Yeah. Huh? Do I need to, if she's going to come up and address, do I need to open the public portion again? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I did. So, okay, we're going to reopen the public portion so that you can reply to that.
And may I have the question repeated again so I understand that?
So in the proposed conditions of approval associated with this conditional use permit, when it specifies non-teaching events, which we're talking about the number of those kinds of things, the language says in part, the use may include non-teaching events such as school tours, parent nights, art shows, and staff teacher training. I mean, you referred to student fun nights, I'm using your language. So are there other kinds, what I'm trying to do is not unnecessarily restrict what you are, not put you in a position of someone saying to you, well, you weren't allowed to have student fun nights, because it's not, and I understand these are examples, so I just wanted you to be comfortable with the language that's in here, or did we, from your perspective, need to expand that language in some manner?
I'm wondering if with your input as well, but it seems like social events, outreach events, and parent events, it would be the three categories, really?
I understand your point. It's a good point, because it's pretty broad.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Sorry.
And you need to identify yourself again.
This Dan Colella with Fusion. It's a good point, and I understand. I think what you're looking to do. If there's a way to draft the resolution so that it's a little bit more general in nature, but captures the spirit, I think, as we understand it. And I'd be happy to, ask Marnie, to take a stab at that.
May I make a suggestion? If we simply add student social events, because
well, teacher training, though, I think is in that
it's
category.
In there. That's
and
in there.
It kind of throws the whole,
But staff teacher training is specified in there, so that's in there. Art shows are in there. Parent nights are in there, and school tours. So either when we heard you some time ago, when you got the original conditional use permit, and tonight, the only kind of activity that I remember you're mentioning the potential of was what I might refer to as student social events. Mm-hmm. So my question really would be, does that cover the what? So what we're trying to do is both allow you to do what's legitimate for you to do as a school, but not say you can, be having bingo nights for the town or something, No, I'm just saying, you know what I mean? I mean, something that's not consistent with what we're talking about.
My concern is having teacher trainings as part of that language, since we're limiting it from Monday through Thursday and Friday during school hours, when teachers would be on campus anyway.
That's actually a good point from an operational perspective, because if the Monday through Thursday stays with the amendment, we're typically closed on Fridays, which is the perfect opportunity to have a teacher training event. And
not closed on Fridays, but we aren't holding classes.
Right. We wouldn't be able to have the teacher training event Monday through Thursday, I guess, is what we're saying. So if we could have Fridays and maybe have the CUP language address Fridays for teacher training events, and that would be one of our 1 per week or 4 per month, or however that might be worded. From an operational perspective, that might work a little bit better for us.
And that would be occurring during normal business hours, correct?
Yes.
So I'll look to my other commissioners. I wouldn't care if you did that weekly, if it's during normal business hours. So I think we could make that a part of the conditional use permit, that occurs on, we'll just say on Fridays.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Do you all feel okay with that? And then we'll include student social activities on the Monday through Thursday.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the public portion of this again. Are there any questions of staff? I have one, and it might be a small thing, but on the number of trips, I'm confused how we have an increased number of 10 a.m. peak hour trips with no increase of p.m. peak hour trips. How was that analyzed?
So the increase that you see, what you'll see is that the top line of that chart talks about the prior specialty retail that occupied the space as Borders. So retail has a higher evening generator, and so there's still there is still an increase from the 20 that the existing 40 student count has, from 20 to 26, but the specialty retail was already at PM peak generator of 26 trips. So that's why there's no increase associated with it above and beyond what the retail use several years ago was.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, Commissioner Talasfor?
Yeah, this is for staff as well. The community benefit that's mentioned in the staff report, which is $5,000 toward the improvements that are underway for the bandstand at Oak Meadow Park. How is that chosen, and what's the contiguous benefit of that choice?
So staff always, has a kind of an ongoing discussion with the applicant when community benefit is required. The applicant talked about providing some funds towards community beautification projects that were going on, or potentially being part of that as far as contributing to that aspect of the community. Staff reached out to our Parks and Public Works Department to see what projects might fall under that kind of category. This was one that stood out to staff as well as the applicant, just in regards to the level of music programs and arts programs that the school offers. So there was a connection on that level as far as wanting to contribute to the opportunity to provide those kinds of venues within town and continue to maintain those.
That answer your question?
It answers my question. I'm not sure I agree with it. But then that's that community benefit discussion, isn't
Right.
it?
That's a different topic.
Right.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a stab at a motion? Anyone? I guess I'll make an effort at it. I'm going to move to approve the conditional use permit application U-14-009 at 50 University Avenue, Suite 300. And I have not done this with a CUP, so I may be looking to you guys for some assistance. I can make the findings that the project is consistent with the approved PD as required by Section 15301A of the State Environmental Guidelines. This project is categorically exempt. As required by Section 29.20.190 of the Town Code for granting a CUP, and the project is consistent with the redevelopment plan for the Central Los Gatos redevelopment project area. And then I assume I need to go to Exhibit 3. Is that correct? Yes. Is that correct? Or do I need to, yes? Okay. I would like to say on item number 6 that we add in the language that student social events will be included in the non-teaching events, and that those events will be limited to Tuesday through Thursday nights. Or, sorry, Monday. Sorry. It's getting very late. Monday through Thursday nights, and that there are 4 allowed per month. I would like to make the staff teacher training change, that is held on Fridays during standard work hours. And there is no limit on those. Those can be handled every Friday. I don't believe I have anything else to add. Is there anything else I need to add to this? Great. Do I have a second? Commissioner Bondami?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, sorry, you're right. Is there a discussion?
Thank you. I'm wondering, I asked the applicant about the 23 pupil growth, having that be a condition. Can we please, would the maker of the motion consider putting that into a condition?
I definitely would. Commissioner Bondami?
I'll second that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Talasfor. Commissioner Erickson?
So can I didn't quite catch the addition, so could you repeat the addition for me? So I understand what the motion is.
Yes, it's my understanding that Commissioner Talasford would like to restrict the growth of the school student population to 63, that the number of students will not go beyond 63. To what?
So I guess my question about that is that's already a part of the conditions of approval. Isn't, I mean, that'd be my interpretation, so one doesn't need to say any more than it's limited to 63.
Well, something you could consider doing is maybe adding on to condition number 4 that no additional expansion would be, no additional increase in student or staff would be permitted within the existing tenant space.
Yeah.
Would that be
That
acceptable?
would, yes, that would, to me.
Okay, that's acceptable to me.
Acceptable to me. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you.
It just clarifies that we're not going to get a request every couple of years to reduce staff and increase the students. It just says.
Well, what I'd offer is that they could always still reapply to modify the conditional use permit. So just want to make sure we understand that this is not a hard cap.
Yeah.
I do. I guess that my impression of that, though, is if that's years down the road and we are not here, the intent of this commission is very clear.
If I may, that was the purpose. There is a final number at this location. This is a retail center after all, which is, I hate to do this because as much as I approve of what the school has done for so many students, I'm not going to support the motion, only because of the traffic implication. And sometimes your success, really is aiming you and directing you to look, for bigger space. There probably is a bigger need out there, and I'd like to see you grow there. But this is one of the jewel retail centers in our space. And although it seems that you're being able to manage all of this very well, I just want to be cautious, and so that's why I will be voting no. Thank you.
Commissioner Erickson.
I just have a question of staff, just to be sure I understand. Sometimes I don't think I understand very well. Can a current conditional use permit limit a future conditional use permit?
It can't stop an applicant from coming in and requesting anything that they choose to request. Again, it would usually be required to show that they meet our standards and guidelines, but just as Joel had said, they can come in and make that request. But it does provide for future reference as well as for potential future tenants if this tenant were to go away and somebody else were to come in and get the idea of making a similar increase or something, that it provides it with a little more clarity than having to look back at the minutes potentially.
And a perfect example would be many of your conditional use permits will say no entertainment, and then they come back in and ask for entertainment, so.
All right. All in favor of the motion? Okay, aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right, that's 3-1. Mr. Paulson, is there any further action?
There are appeal rights, so anyone that's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. The appeal forms are available in the clerk's office. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
And they did not fill out cards. I still need you to fill out your cards. Oh, good. You can just bring them up to staff, please. Mr. Paulson, is there a report?
There is, and so Ms. Pravetti will come up as well. But first, I'll go through the DRC. Since last week, we had one Development Review Committee meeting. That was yesterday. An item for a new house at 520 Santa Rosa Drive was approved on a vacant lot. A approval of a demo and reconstruction of a new residence at 146 Clover Way was approved, as well as at 399 Nicholson Avenue and 16266 Harwood Road. All those demolished existing structures and build new homes. And they also recommended approval of parking lot modifications for the Walgreens Square Center out at Blossom Hill and Harwood. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Privetti.
Thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. On Monday evening, May 19th, the Town Council met and considered the increase to the traffic impact fee that was approved, and so that will take effect in about 60 days, and applicants will need to comply with the increase per the Town Council's direction. In addition, the Town Council considered its budget for the next fiscal year, 14-15. Most notably, the Council did approve moving from a contract code compliance service here in the town to a full-time town compliance officer for next fiscal year, and they also approved a part-time community service officer to handle nighttime activities such as noise complaints, as well as other budget matters. And that concludes staff's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commission matters? All right, then our meeting is adjourned.